Call to order the regular board meeting of June 23rd, 2020 at 7 p.m. Please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item 3 is roll call. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Here.
Treasurer Lafata.
Here.
Trustee Anderson.
Here.
Trustee Joseph.
Here.
Trustee Demink.
Here.
Trustee Vosberg.
Here.
Clerk Berry is here.
All members are present. Item number 4 are presentations. And before you read the item, Clerk Berry, we are joined with Pam Hill and Amanda Kronk on Zoom. You'll see their pictures up on the screen. Item 4A.
Item 4A is a presentation of the 2019 Township Audit Report by Plant Moran.
Turn it over to Amanda and Pam.
Thank you so much. So thank you again for having us tonight and also for allowing us to present virtually. We do appreciate it. We are going to cover tonight the audit results for the Township's fiscal year ending 12/31/2019. You should have in your packets the financial statements, the end of audit letter, and then as Dan has put up on screen, the graph presentation that we have put together to cover the financial highlights, so we don't have to bore you with all 80 plus pages of the financial statements tonight. So just to give you a quick background on the audit, so we did spend over 350 hours this year auditing the books and records of the township, and we did that completely and entirely remote. So while that's not our preference, we prefer to be in person and working with your team in person. Unfortunately, as you all know, circumstances prevented that. But we have strong investment in technology, and with the history we've had with the township and the great working relationship we have, we're really able to work through it, I think, fairly efficiently. And I think we're at the same meeting that we typically are every year. And on top of that, you may have noticed as you're going through your financial statements, the township actually adopted a pretty complicated new accounting standard in the current year as well. So with that, you can imagine a lot of time on your staff and above and beyond what they would normally have to do in order to go through the audit with adopting the new standard and also doing this remotely. So really special thanks to Vicki, her entire team, Dan, Paul, Cindy. We really work with many other departments throughout the township, and we spent quite a bit of time covering all of the details of the audit with the 3 full-time elected officials a few weeks back as well. So I did briefly want to just touch on the main result of the audit, which is the audit opinion letter. That's what the township hires Plant Moran to provide, and is in your packet in the financial statements, pages 1 and 2. That was once again an unmodified opinion, which is the highest level of assurance that the township can receive, and basically means that you can rely on the numbers that are in the financial statements as stated. And so with that, to talk a little bit about the numbers, I'm going to turn it over to Amanda and Dan to the next slide, please. Thank you.
Okay. So as Pam mentioned, instead of going over all of the pages of your financial statements, we've summarized some highlights here and some trend information that we'll briefly cover. So the first slide on your screen here you can see is general fund revenue. And as you can see over the last 5 years, general fund revenue really has been very consistent. So there's really not a whole lot of change to discuss there. But what I would like to point out is that steel blue bar, which is the biggest part of general funds revenue, represents intergovernmental revenue, which is primarily your state shared revenue. So, you know, Pam mentioned the pandemic and how it impacted the audit. The township will continue to see impacts, and I know management has really worked hard to try and estimate those impacts to the best of their ability. And fortunately or unfortunately, your largest revenue stream is likely going to be impacted, just because that is state shared revenue. And at this point, it's a little unclear how that's going to be impacted. So I bring that up just because I know management has been planning for that and doing the best that they can with what the state has given them as far as tools. But it's something to keep an eye on. Certainly as you receive your next payment here and in the next week or so, and certainly in the months to come, just keeping an eye on that revenue stream.
And Amanda, if I may, really quick, one other important thing, especially for any resident that's listening, if you have not filled out your census information, here's a shameless plug for the township. This is how the township receives funding, and as Amanda just pointed out, is the largest funding source in your general fund. It is based on population. So if you have not filled out your census form, please do so.
Great point. The next slide, we're going to switch gears a little bit and focus on general funds expenditures. Again, fairly consistent other than 2016, which the driver there was a transfer to your public safety funds at the time. So had that transfer been backed out or segregated, again, your trend would be very similar year over year. Mainly, the thing I wanted to point out is you do see a little bit of an increase from 2018 to 2019. That really is primarily due to some staffing level changes along with fringe benefit changes. So nothing large to point out. Again, it's just, gradual increases in those areas. The next slide, we're going to focus on general funds fund balance. So this really represents the difference between general funds assets and liabilities. So you'll see 2019, the total bar did go up. Again, the general fund had a solid year, adding to its fund balance, which now sits at just over $11 million. So you're almost back to the level that you were at in 2015. Now, the thing I'd like to point out here is the township did make the strategic decision to earmark some of that fund balance for budget stabilization as we were kind of in the middle of the pandemic. So in order to, use some of that fund balance in necessary situations in case state shared revenue or, unknown circumstances do arise, the township did earmark some of general funds fund balance to assist with budget stabilization. Now, one other thing I would like to point out is the township has been working on strategic capital planning and other planning related items. So you do see general funds unassigned fund balance at just over $7.6 million. So again, the township is in the midst of planning and certainly growing as well. So with the unknown items potentially related to COVID-19, the township is in a good position to weather any unknown storms as of today. So we commend the township for that. The next slide, we're going to switch gears a little bit away from general fund and focus on public safety. So you'll see an asterisk by the 2015, 2016, 2017. That's solely indicating that at that point in time, those funds were separate funds within the township's financial statement. So for comparability reasons, we have added those three together for this slide. So keep that in mind. I'd like to focus your attention on the 2019 column. So you will see the orange bar is a little bit higher than the teal bar. So the orange bar represents public safety expenditures, while the teal bar represents revenues. Now, this was due to strategic planning. The township is heavily investing in a new fire station. So again, those expenditures as they are incurred will be reported in that orange column, if you will. And that also accounts for that decrease that you see in fund balance, which are the numbers on the columns. So again, Strategic planning, I mean, these were planned capital investments, and that fire station is ongoing at year end, or at December 31st. So that project was in the middle of being completed. So again, no issues here, just planned investments being made.
Yeah, and to just add to that, Amanda, too, if you kind of back that out, from an operational perspective, the public safety fund did add slightly to fund balance. So if you were to kind of back out those capital outlay items, so as you said, kind of those one-time investments.
Okay, the next slide, we're gonna switch gears again and focus on the township's water and sewer fund. So as you can see, the trend has been of the water and sewer fund's net position has had some peaks and valleys, but those valleys really are related to the adoption of new accounting standards. So not necessarily any operational issues, but just some accounting changes. So I would like to focus your attention on the 2019 results. So the ending net position in your water and sewer fund is just over 58 million. Now, while that sounds like a big number, I would like to add to that almost 46 million of that is your infrastructure. So your capital assets, your lines, and all the pieces that go with those lines. And so a lot of it is capital related. So that's not necessarily just all available funds and resources. So like I said, about 46 million of that is the capital piece. So as you can see, the gray bar is the revenues of the system this year. The blue bar is the expenses. So, the water and sewer fund did add to its net position. One thing I did want to add that isn't on this slide is the operating income. So the water and sewer fund did have an operating income of just over 500,000 this year. So what that really tells you is that the current users of the system are covering the costs associated with using that system. So, and you're doing so in a manner that also allows you to set aside a little bit of that revenue, if you will, for future capital needs. So you're definitely your rate structure is set in such a manner that you are able to address any needs as they arise, certainly, and the operating income is definitely an indicator of the health of your water and sewer fund. So at this point, we didn't see anything that raised any concerns, and you're operating in a manner that you should be. The next slide, we wanted to quickly cover your legacy costs. We know that this is an area that the township has focused on over the past few years. So the bar on the left represents your pension system. The bar on the right represents your retiree healthcare trust fund. So that number that you see at the top of those bars represents your total liabilities for those two systems. And those are calculated by an actuary. The blue bar represents the assets that you've set aside in order to fund those liabilities. So the blue bars are taking up a majority of the bar, which is great to see. So your pension system is almost 70% funded, and your retiree healthcare system is quite well funded in the high 80s. So again, the township has certainly been mindful of these liabilities and these benefits provided for in these plans, and has made targeted efforts to set aside resources to fund those benefits, and it shows in these graphs. So again, keeping your eye on the ball. I know you've made some plan design changes that helps with that. So we just wanted to add this and certainly commend the township for really meeting these liabilities head on, if you will.
Yeah, and I would like to just add to that too. I agree. I mean, I think as a board, you should feel very good about the progress that the township has made and where you're standing in terms of your legacy costs and obligations. Even the progress you've made in the last 5 years or so, 5 to 7 years, It's very evident that the three full-time elected officials, management, and the board have really taken their responsibility to their employees and retirees very seriously and have done whatever they could to ensure that everyone will be, they will be able to fund the promises that have been made a long time ago to those individuals. And so that's very evident. I wish I could present to all of my clients that their OPEB funds were almost 90% funded. So not an easy feat, and I think one that you should feel really proud of. I think, is there one? I think that was the last slide. So we can either, Dan, I defer to you. We can either take questions on the slides and then go through the letter, or we could go through the letter and then just take questions at the end. What would be easiest for you?
Maybe go through the letter and questions at the end.
Okay, great. So also in your packet, you should have had a letter addressed to the Board of Trustees. It is 7 pages long. So a couple things I want to touch on in this. So there's 2 sections in the letter. And before I get into those sections, I actually want to touch on a section that's missing from the letter, because I think that's actually probably one of the most important things. And that would be if we, during our testing, if we have any deficiencies in internal controls related to financial reporting that we have noted, this would be the letter where we would do so. That letter is missing today, and that's because we did not have any internal control deficiencies. And so, again, that's something that I think the township should take great pride in. And as board members, you should feel really good about the fact that you can really rely on the numbers that you are given from finance and that management's using, especially in times like these when you're dealing with potential revenue reductions. Being able to feel confident that the numbers you're receiving from your team are accurate, I think is definitely something that I wouldn't take for granted. So I think it's definitely commend Vicki and her team for another great year, and really for everybody to work as a team on those internal controls and make sure the proper checks and balances are in place for the township. So section 1 within the letter is really just a follow-up to the initial letter that we sent out to the board. Really nothing to report. We didn't deviate from our plan at all. So nothing really to report there. We do in section 2 have some other recommendations and just items. I wasn't planning on really going through these in a lot of detail, but if you do have time, if you haven't already, if you could just make sure you take a read through those. We have some process improvements, recommendations or best practices that we have made that we noted during the audit. Also some links to our COVID-19 Resource Center, which I'm sure you've gotten a million emails from everybody about COVID-19. We have a specific resource center just for our governmental clients. So if you haven't visited it, I highly encourage you to do so. It'll be very focused just on governmental. We also have a COVID site for all types of clients, but we do have one specifically for governments that I would encourage you to take a look at. So with that, I wasn't planning on going through the rest of the legislative and updates, but again, happy to entertain any questions surrounding any of those items or anything else that we presented tonight.
I would open it up to the board for any questions for Plant Moran. Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just a question or a comment. If Pam or Amanda, either of you could just address for the board members as well as the public, how exactly you were able to conduct the audit remotely, just to ensure that information and data was transmitted securely and that we can ensure that that information was accurate and that it was the correct information and that information was, if necessary, returned to us securely as well. And just kind of go over just very, very briefly what the process looked like from a remote standpoint.
Sure, thank you, Cindy. So we actually, before this pandemic even was ever on anyone's radar, we as a firm have invested very strongly in technology. And it has really suited us well throughout this pandemic because we were able to convert remotely really within a day, and really without any hitches. And the way we were able to do this with our clients and audits is we have a secure portal that we use that can only be accessed by certain members of the audit team, not anyone, not just anyone in Plant Moran. So only a couple members of the audit team have access to that. And then also, in order for anyone from the township to be able to upload data or information to that website, they have to specifically be given user access rights through Vicki would have given us that information, and we would have had to specifically add those individuals to that site. So again, securing information, on both ends. Those our technology. Also, we have various SOC 1 and SOC 2 reports surrounding internal controls and the securities of our system, where those are being tested and opined on for the security, and very, very secure. And those files do get deleted once the audit is finalized, and all any kind of sensitive information would be scrubbed, before it's put out on there. So it was the use of our collaboration sites and really a lot of internal discussions and communication with your team and our team. So, whether that was with we use Microsoft Teams, whether that was with Teams or a lot of phone calls, just to work through questions and issues. But the actual transfer of documents in order for us to be able to review them was done through our secure collaboration site. So I don't know, Cindy, if that gets to your question or if you wanted us to expand on anything further.
Thank you, Pam. No, that was great. I just wanted everyone to be aware of the transmission process to ensure that there was no compromise of any of the data that you received in completing the audit.
Correct. Yes.
Thank you.
Any further comments on the board? Trustee Joseph.
Thank you. I just wanted to just clarify a couple of our bigger funds. You touched on the water fund or the enterprise fund. In both 2018 as well as 19, we took in more revenue than we had expenditures. And on the public safety side, we had sort of the opposite occur, that being more expenditures than we had revenue. I appreciate you pointing out that we did have some planned capital improvements in the public safety fund. In addition to legacy costs, so we've made some good strides with funding OPEB, but I was wondering if there's an opinion or some recommendations with regard to the enterprise fund and the public safety fund as we move into what is generally around the board considered to be a very, kind of uncertain time with state revenue sharing. Do you have a recommendation regarding what those funds should look like? So fund balances, minimum, maximum, should we be structuring our rates to reflect a desired fund balance? The concern again is what does the revenue sharing look like next year? And that's pretty unanswered at this point. Is there an opinion with regard to where our fund balances should be, specifically the enterprise fund or the water fund and our public safety fund?
Sure. So while unfortunately there's no right or wrong answer regarding, what your fund balance level or net position level should be, specifically in the public safety and water and sewer funds, I would encourage the board and certainly management to, take a look at your capital needs that you see on the horizon, because those levels really that you're pointing to should be driven towards what those needs are. So are you quote unquote saving for needs that you see 5 years down the road, or do you need to be making those investments now? That really should be a product of your, I'll call it a 5-year capital plan or your forecasting. So I know management really has spent a lot of time forecasting and looking at results and growth and things like that. So there really is no right answer, but I would encourage you to take a look at the planning that management has done, and certainly take a look at your fund balance levels and assess whether those are right sized for the township based on your planning. That would be my recommendation.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you. In the report, the verbal part, I heard the statement, I think I heard this, our revenue will be impacted, but not sure how. Is that a statement because we're assuming there will be a change in the state funding levels, or is it just because of the COVID thing, something
Dan, could you
unknown
repeat the
could
question?
appear?
It was a little bit hard to hear. I'm sorry.
Repeat the question.
Wondering, the statement, our revenue will be impacted, but we're not sure how. I thought I heard that being reported.
Oh, yeah.
So is that because there's an assumption that the state is going to change some of their formulas? Or is it just because of the impact of COVID, we're not sure what that impact will be?
Did you hear the question that time,
Yes,
Pam?
I
It's kind
did.
of like
Thank you for repeating that.
what we discussed in my office probably was that revenue sharing impact and potential long-term and short-term revenue impacts of COVID.
Yeah, I think what we were referring to, and that we weren't sure exactly how it would be impacted, would be there's two tricky factors that happened in 2020, right? So you had a pandemic, or you're still in the midst of one. So no one knows what sales tax collections are going to look like. So, we've heard everything from, oh, they're down drastically, to, oh, actually the online sales tax were quite a bit higher than people thought. And so those numbers are going to come in higher. So there's not an exact known as to how much they'll go down and for how long they'll be down, which will definitely impact the amount of constitutional revenue sharing that you receive from the state. The other impact, again, is the census, the 2020 census. And as a growing community, we're hoping that's going to go in your favor, right? And boost your numbers up, although, you won't be made whole for any of that until 2021. So there's kind of two competing factors. And I believe that's what Amanda meant with her comment about, we're not really sure how revenue will be impacted. I think it's more about the amount of how it will be impacted on the constitutional piece. Now, the statutory piece for CBTRS, that's always up in the air. So, I haven't heard anything on that, but I think that the bigger piece for you is the constitutional, and that would be the piece that we would have really been focusing on with that comment.
All right, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions from the board? I would like to thank Pam and Amanda and our finance director, Vicki Bauer. Plant Moran has been nothing but a gem to deal with, and very professional, answering the hard questions all the way along the way. And I appreciate our finance director as well for the fine work she does on this audit. I am going to close down after this item ends, the Zoom portion of this meeting. And with that, if there's any further comments from the board for Plant Moran. Thank you both.
Thank you so much.
Bye, Amanda.
Bye.
Bye.
Item number 5, department reports. Are there any department reports? Director Coddington.
Good evening, everyone. I just want to give the board an update on the the sandbagging update along the lakefront. The water levels have not started going down, so there's still a lot of sandbagging and protecting of property going on. And I wanted to let the board know that there's been a lot of residents getting a hold of me and letting me know how appreciative, how grateful they are that the board is helping out and that the DPW is helping out with their problems along the water. So I just want to let you guys know they really appreciate all the help they're getting from us. And also that we are still assisting on Saturdays, on Saturday mornings at the DPW. We're trying to help out with 4 or 5 guys there trying to make sandbags for half a day and help the residents out there. And I want to let you guys know that there's also sand available still at the DPW. Every day there's a big pile of sand there, and sandbags are available at the DPW. There's sand available behind the fire hall and the pump station on Jefferson at 48475 Jefferson. And there's also sand available at Brandenburg Park. And you can get sandbags from the fire hall on Baker and 23 on off hours. That station is always manned. That's the one at 23 Mile and Baker Road. You can get sandbags there after hours from the DPW. Other than that, you can get sandbags from the DPW from 8 to 4:30, Monday through Friday. So I want to let you guys know that the public is very appreciative of what we're doing out there for them. Thank you.
Any questions from the board for Director Coddington? Director Kirsten. Go, make sure your microphone's on, please.
Thank the community, both the citizens and the businesses. For the last 2 weeks, we at the police and fire department have been absolutely overwhelmed and a much appreciated food, drinks, water, candy, if I don't show it. It's been overwhelming. We've been trying to thank everybody who's shown their support for both police and fire department here in Chesterfield Township. It's greatly appreciated. And I had a list of names I was going to read off. I think it'd take me too long, so I'll move on to the next presenter. But again, thank you to the entire community, the business sector, residents from Chesterfield Township for everything that you've done for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Director Sonnenberg.
Good evening. I just wanted to go through and touch on some of the things we have going on. Our department's always been really busy, and I know at these department head reports, I'm usually extremely brief, and I want to kind of congratulate our team. I've been here for almost 3 years, and I just want to do a quick look back and kind of highlight some of the things we've done and some of the things we're doing today. So I'll try to be as brief as possible. I just put together a really quick summary. Some of this has to do, like this first slide you'll see here. A while back, thanks to the board, you gave us permission to start an electronic work order system. So now we've got that in place, and we're monitoring some of the things that are going on in the township. And this will be like the first month that we're actually tracking what we're doing on a daily basis, who's doing what and where and how long it's taking. And our team's done a fantastic job adapting to this. So as you can see, just briefly this month, we have 108 open work orders and 123 closed. So what this helps us do is track where we're working and when and what we can get to and why we can't get to it. And it also helps us in the future when we talk about employee roles and responsibilities and staffing. So go ahead, Dan, you can turn to the next one. This one's tough to see, but in addition to those work orders, we also hired a fleet manager, and he's doing a fantastic job. He has his own work order system related to the vehicles. He has all of our vehicles in. He actually has all the equipment logged, all the maintenance logs in there, all electronically, so anybody can dive in and look at it. He also does a really good job at tracking his time on each of the vehicles. This will help us going into budgeting this season when we look at our vehicles, age, maintenance, and repairs that are needed. So he currently has 20 work orders that are closed out this month and 11 that are still open. So he's got plenty of work to do for one man, but he's doing his best to keep up, so we appreciate him every day. This list here real quick just shows above and beyond that work order system that we have, it also tracks projects. Now, projects have separate work orders. So currently, we have on this list 22 ongoing projects in Chesterfield. I'm going to burn through about 8 of them because I don't want to keep you here all night. But I kind of like to highlight, I don't do a real good job highlighting the fantastic work that our team has done here. And I just want to take a minute and go through some of those projects. So this one here, although the picture is really bad, we're going to start at Brandenburg Park. This picture is a picture I took today. It is horrible, I'll admit. But it shows 2 things. one, if you're at Brandenburg Park lately, I ask you to drive by and look at the entrance booth. It is beyond repair. We had a really bad roof leak, and we actually tore the soffit off in the back because what it was doing is trapping the moisture. So we were getting mold in the back part of the overhang of the building, not in the building itself. So we have that ripped open. One of our projects is in the process of getting prices to either completely come in with a prefab structure or rebuild that structure. In front of that, the anchor that you see was moved from the back to the front. You'll see we'll put a coat of paint on that, and we're going to throw some nice rocks and landscaping around that. The next thing you'll notice in this picture, which was taken today as well, is in the next couple of days, you'll see these trees are Austrian pines, and they're just messy trees. They're all around the parking lot. We are going to start cutting these down. There's 7 or 8 of them that are going to be removed in the next couple of days, just because they rain down stuff on people's cars, and we get nothing but complaints. So it'll open up that driveway. It'll give us a clean view, and it also takes some of the maintenance down from all that getting our storm sewers. So go ahead, Dan. This is inside our Brandenburg Park main building. So you can see we've done some demo in there. We took advantage of the COVID time. We tore into this. We opened it up a little bit. We tore the ceiling down. We're going to package this up with our shoreline. We're going to come back to the board with some pricing in the fall, and we're going to put some numbers together. We've had some contractors out there. We're doing some research. We're getting some stuff together. We also had some concerns about a few things, like this picture here. We don't have very old buildings, but buildings past a certain age, there's always a chance that there's asbestos. So we did find some suspect materials, and we had some tested at Bay Harbor, which all came back negative, or the Anchor Bay Pump Station. This particular piece came back positive, so it was the one piece of asbestos we could find in our portfolio. So we're in the process of having that abated. This is the Brandenburg shoreline, which you all know and are aware of. We've been working really hard. We'll touch more on this later, and I believe it's the next agenda item, so you can click that one, Mr. Acciavatti. This here is the Weber Paddle Park. To the left, you'll see, you can barely see, but that was the Weber Paddle Park, the last aerial photo taken on Google Earth around about 2019. To the right, it was taken a couple days ago, just before the paddle launch got put in. So you can see that park is really taking shape. The driveways are in, the grass is coming up. That contractor there, Dan, if you could flip that slide, has done an absolutely fantastic job. I can't say enough about the guy. He is standing with our back to us there. The guy has worked there night and day to get that project done, sorry. He's just been fantastic. This is our fire station. You've seen this picture at our last board meeting, but I wanted to touch on this just to say that today the firemen have moved upstairs, and that is the upstairs, the finished area, the living space and kitchen. It's a fantastic space. They've enjoyed it. I'd like to, again, it's been a pleasure working with Director Kirsten on this project. We got it done. It looks like we're gonna be close to on time with COVID, but under budget, so we've done really good there. If you'll go to the next picture, that's the new apparatus bay, which is higher than the 4 existing bays, so we can open up a cab, truck, and we just trying to clean it up and simplify things. That is a real point of pride for our project team. Go ahead, Dan, to the next one. This is some exciting news. We recently applied in the back of the senior center. There is a luxurious chunk of green grass and nothing else. And we applied for a grant through the CBDG fund to put in a senior park. So we put together some renderings, we put together a drawing, we applied. They only gave so many people awarded the funds, and we were lucky enough, that's another grant that we received recently. So you can turn to the next slide, Dan. This is just a quick overview. We really scaled down this project and changed a couple things, but you'll see back there, we're gonna include in the future a pavilion, an exercise area, a walking area, and a covered gathering area. So it'll just give the seniors somewhere outside the senior center, and the majority of this project will be grant funded. You'll hear more about that in the next couple weeks or months in the board meetings. Go ahead, Mr. Acciavatti. This is a point of pride for us. This was when I started. Dan walked me back there and he basically said, hey, we got to do something with this wall. So there's a real nice gentleman, Angelo Lima, who I met, and he had the first 24th War Memorial. Sorry. He poured his heart and soul in that, and he got stuck because he couldn't get any funding. So we worked together, we raised like $230,000 donations and got it done. So, sorry. The next thing you'll see is that's Angela Lima's granddaughter. So behind that memorial wall, I'm trying to pull myself together, sorry. Behind that memorial wall, we moved the cannon from over on Community Center Drive onto a new pad. What our goal was, like we talked about before, we got a lot of property in the back of the building, and we encourage you to go back there and check it out. That memorial started a really, really nice thing where we're gonna try to give a little area for all the different branches of service. So at first we have the Marine Memorial. Behind that wall, you'll see this howitzer cannon that came from the old Vets Park to this new pad. We're gonna put some stones around there and dress it up, and you'll see that happen in the future, but I encourage you all to go back and take a quick look at it. So I think that wraps up my presentation, but I'd also like to tell you that, you know, that we have a ton of other things going on that I didn't touch on. We have work going on at Pollen Park, we're redoing the diamonds, while we're shut down for COVID. Our guys we've made a lot of changes, and you'll see, we've subbed some work out, we brought some additional work in. So I really appreciate our guys and our staff. We've changed their responsibilities and they've all stepped up, and we're getting a lot more, like we talked about before, project-related work rather than cutting grass and doing little stuff like that. So I'd really like to thank my team for that. Thank you. Sorry about the long.
Any questions for Director Kirsten? Trustee Domingue.
I have department comments from
hold on,
Leisure Services. Is that okay?
I'll go to you in 1 minute. I want to thank Director Sonnenberg and his entire team. You're emotional up there because you put your heart and soul into all those projects, and I understand. So no need to apologize for loving and caring for what you did and trying to take 3 years worth of work and shove it into a 10-minute presentation. I thank you.
Thank you.
Trustee Domingue.
These are the announcements from our Leisure Services Division. 6th and 8th graders, are you ready for some outdoor sports conditioning? Sign up today for the Stay Strong Strength and Conditioning Football Camp that invites players to participate in ladder agility, tire flipping, hurdles, and more in a circuit training structure. Proper form, stances, and techniques will be introduced. This high-intensity training combines hard work, positive reinforcement, and fun with age-appropriate instruction. Programs take place on Mondays and Wednesdays from 6 to 8 p.m., July 12th through August 6th. Cost is $60 for residents, $65 for non-resident. You can register online at parks.chesterfieldtownship.org. Gather your thoughts and document your adventures and write to inspire, grab and go. Curbside at the Senior Center this week. It's individual journals and snacks courtesy of Story Point. Senior members can drive over to the Township Municipal Offices, call 949-0400 extension 4 on your arrival, and our employees will deliver this week's offering to your car. As a precautionary measure in response to the coronavirus pandemic, the Chesterfield Township Senior Center is closed and will remain closed in accordance with all executive orders. Engage with us through our Facebook pages at Chesterfield Township Parks and Rec or Chesterfield Township Senior Center. The Leisure Services Department summer publication is available online at parks.chesterfieldtownship.org. Limited registrations are being accepted for a number of activities. There's art, football, fitness classes, story time, and more. The status of all programs are subject to cancellation or changes based on the pandemic response. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. Any further department reports? Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just a couple of updates from clerks as well as from the Elections Department. From the Clerks Department, passport processing will resume here at the Township on July the 6th. That will include all full-service passport services, including photos and regular passport processing. That will also include expedited processing as well. However, we are subject to the U.S. Department of State's processing time. Chesterfield will process them as we normally do. However, once they leave our hands, they go to the Department of State and then they will process them on their time. We've already been told that there is a significant delay in passport processing. Again, that has nothing to do with the processing here at the clerk's office. That will all be on the end of the Department of State. Our processing time and our processing our process has not changed and will not change. So we will be processing in the same timely manner we always have. The Clerk's Department has been recognized here in Chesterfield as one of the top 1% of all passport agents for the last several years. We're very proud of that. Our team's done a phenomenal job there, and we plan to continue doing that as we resume passport processing on July the 6th. Also in our Records Department, we have very pleased to announce that we have completed digital conversion of over 2 million records since January. All of the Township Board meeting minutes have been converted to digital, which has ensured their security far more than a hard copy existing here in the clerk's office. We now have a better way to secure those as well as to maintain them in their permanent state. That's been a significant undertaking. However, we're very pleased that we have at least gotten 2 million records completed since January. We expect to have another 2 million records completed by the end of the year. Our processes have also been updated to include electronic formatting, and we are working on that. You saw some of that when Director Sonnenberg talked about his electronic work order system. The Clerk's Department has been promoting for several years, anticipating the way that businesses were changing, what the anticipated processing was from the public, that we needed to do more things electronically, not only to maintain those records, but also to allow for more convenience for the public. And so we began that process several years ago. At first, I know it was a little bit of a change that sometimes was uncomfortable for people, but this department heads in the township have been phenomenal in working with us to facilitate electronic processing of various work systems. And that was one example of them. Also, the building department has been phenomenal at converting to virtually all digital records as well. We are looking, in fact, today we had a recent meeting to look to encourage digital processing and how we might facilitate the digital processing of additional permits, such as garage sale permits, vending permits, building department permits, such as for pools and fences, and all of those things that currently require coming into the township offices to do. We are moving in a very rapidly in a direction where those things are all going to be allowed to be done remotely and online. From the time you make your application, you go onto the website, there will be a form that you'll be able to fill out electronically. It will be routed internally electronically as well, and then that permit will be received by the applicant electronically. So virtually touchless, which of course in the wake of COVID is a concern for many people, but also from an efficiency standpoint, it's just a better way to do business. And we're moving, I'm very happy with the progress that we're making, and we hope to be able to unveil that here in the very near future. With regards to the elections department, AV ballots will be mailed next week. We are receiving an unprecedented number of absentee ballot applications for an August primary, and it is taking a little bit more time to process those, but yet we are processing thousands of ballot applications every day in the elections department. We do still plan to stay on time and on target to deliver those ballots and have those processed for next week. If you would like to stay updated in terms of where your absentee ballot is in the process, you can go online. There is a link in our website from our elections page to the Secretary of State's website that will allow you to track your absentee ballot. So if you've submitted a completed absentee ballot application to us, you will be able to see where your ballot is at in the process. If it has been mailed, if we've received your application, all of those things. And so I encourage you to utilize that. If you go to our township website homepage, there is a button specifically for elections. If you click onto that button, it will take you to our elections page, and all of those additional resources are available for you, and all of those additional links as well. We do not anticipate any processing changes as far as precinct locations and the regular process for voting in person on August 4th. If, however, we do receive notice from the Bureau of Elections that some additional changes need to be made, we will be posting those to the website, and the place to find those in the most immediate way is through that elections update button that again is found on our website. We will also post those changes here at the Township Hall, as well as release those to the media, but the very easiest and fastest way to find those updates is to use that elections button on our Township website homepage. In addition to that, we are taking some additional protections to make sure that the public is safe if you do choose to vote in person on Election Day. Some of the steps that we are taking to protect you are the following: masks, gloves, single-use pens. If you come into the precinct location, you will be given a pen that you will use to mark your ballot. You may take that pen with you. If you do not take that pen with you, we will be disposing of that pen. So there will be no sharing of implements, writing implements to mark ballots. We are also going to be marking for social distancing, as well as providing antibacterial wipes of all the election equipment that will be wiped down regularly, and hand sanitizer as well. As far as absentee ballots, when they come into the township offices to protect our employees, we are also going to be sanitizing all mail that comes into, or excuse me, all absentee ballot returns that come into the township offices as well. So we are taking as many precautions as we possibly can, not only to protect the public, but also to protect our employees here at the township when handling absentee ballots and to facilitate the election. Thank you.
Thank you, Treasurer Lafata.
Tax assessment rolls have been completed. Approximately 17,000 summer tax invoices have been printed, and they will be mailed at the end of the week. Taxes cannot be paid prior to July 6th, and they are due without penalty before the first week in September. I'm sure everybody's excited about it, but that's part of the business, part of my responsibility, and it reflects on the Plant Moran audit. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further department reports? We'll move on to item 6 of the agenda. Item 6 is the consent agenda.
Item 6, consent agenda. All items under the consent agenda are considered routine by the board and will be enacted in one motion. There is no separate discussion of these items. If discussion of any item is required by a board member, it will be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Public comments on the consent agenda items are permitted. 6A, approval of the minutes of the regular board meeting of June 9th, 2020. 6B, approval of the agenda with addendum if necessary. Item 6C, approval of the payment of bills as submitted by the Finance Department.
Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda as submitted?
Motion to approve the consent agenda?
Motion by Trustee Demink,
Second.
support by Trustee Vosberg. Discussion from the board. Any comments on the consent agenda from the public? Clerk Figure, has there been any online comments regarding the consent agenda? If not, would you please call the roll?
There have been no online comments submitted for the consent agenda.
Please call the roll.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Barry, aye.
Motion passes. The consent agenda is adopted. Item 7 is the regular agenda, 7A.
Item 7A is to approve a request from Global Dreams, Inc. for a fireworks vending application variance for a 20 by 40 tent at 52050 North Gratiot Avenue, Chesterfield, Michigan, 48047 for the sale of fireworks from June 26th, 2020 through July 5th, 2020. Business operating hours from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m.
Do I have a motion?
Motion to approve as stated.
Motion by Clerk Barry. Is there support?
Support.
Support by Trustee Joseph. Discussion. Clerk Barry.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd just like to make the board members aware that the variance for the 20 by 40 tent is similar, in fact, to the variance that we granted at the last board meeting. The business operating hours that are being requested are 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. We did approve a 10 a.m. to 10 p.m. Time frame at the last meeting. It is up to the board whether we would like to make that consistent or simply approve as the applicant has requested.
Thank you, Clerk Barry. Any further discussion from the board? Trustee Anderson.
Yeah, I'd just like to make a comment on these type of operations. They come up every year around this time. The vendors, fireworks vendors come into our township. Seem like we get, they come down like it's like fish flies, there's a lot of them. But the township itself, our local communities out in Michigan are kind of, little if anything can be done about them. This is this whole operation, fireworks, is something that's predicated through Lansing several years ago. If you do have issues with them, and I know it calls for people concerned, using them is one thing, but as far as the vending of them, the issue there is at Lansing. You have to let them know, express your feeling about it, and if anything will change regarding this. I mean, the state a few years ago passed it. I don't know what the tax, there's additional tax here. I don't know if there's going to be a big windfall, but if you do find them irritating, Lansing's the folks you got to deal with. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Yeah, I would just like to point out that the applicant here, Mr. Hermes, family has been in the township for a long time. They do have some roots here. This is not a an outer state operation that comes in, and as you say, they kind of ascend on our township. And I'd also like to point out that we have very few vendors this year. I know that there have been board members that don't care if we have two. They're not gonna support any fireworks stand, and I understand where they're coming from. But I think we've done a great job this year of working with our legal team and making sure that the variances are appropriate. And normally we're lined up from very early spring. It seems like we just get the snow melting, and we got applicants for fireworks stands, and we don't have that this year. And again, I agree with Trustee Anderson. This is we're very limited in terms of how we can handle these petitions. So this is an appropriate petition. It's consistent with the last variance that we granted. And as I say, the Hermes family has been in this township for a long time in various businesses. And this individual's request, I'm comfortable knowing that he's a reputable fireworks vendor. So that's why I supported it. And I think we've done a good job limiting the number of fireworks stands. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? Any comments from the public or petitioner? We have a motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Anderson to approve item 7A as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Clerk Berry. Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion passes. Item 7B.
Item 7B is a discussion on the Brandenburg Park fish habitat long-term feasibility and maintenance.
Do I have a motion to open for discussion on item 7B?
Motion to open the discussion.
Motion by Treasurer Lafata.
Support.
Support by Trustee Joseph. We do have representatives from the prime consultant on this project, Orchard OHM Advisors here. And I think I would like to start maybe with Treasurer Lafata and Trustee Joseph because I believe you're the ones that put the agenda item on the agenda. So Trustee Joseph.
Well, I got a request from a resident, actually from Treasurer Lafata, that has been very interested in bringing some concerns that they have regarding the fish habitat. I'll just add mine and then let those others comment. It's a wonderful project in a number of ways. It's one that captures some revenue through a DNR grant. There is some concern about what this project looks like in a few years. So a fish habitat that is designed to create an environment for fish and spawning, and it doesn't always look like an environment that is a people habitat. So if you are looking for shoreline that involves you being able to access the water, this isn't it. So for those who haven't been part of the discussion over the last few years, what you're talking about is the shoreline being preserved for fish habitat. So we will have a lot of cement barriers that go into the water to break waves and make for a much calmer, sort of still waters near the shore. We've had a lot of residents that called and said, what does that look like in a few years? Do we end up with vegetation overgrown? Do we get a swamp? Do we get mosquitoes? Do we get no waves coming into the shoreline, or reduced waves also limit the amount of sort of natural cleansing that occurs when waves come in and go back out? So we are most certainly creating an environment that is very good for fish habitat. And I think, concerns about human habitat, there are those of us that thought you know, a beach area with boat slips and commerce was a better route to go. That is not what the board approved. And so the fish habitat is what we have at Brandenburg. And so now the next round of questions or concerns are how do we maximize that project and make sure that it is maintained in a way that supports human habitat and human interaction. So Mr. Kadich has been, I think, at every meeting that we've had over the past few years to discuss this project. And he has reached out to initially to Treasurer Lafata, actually the whole board, and asked about some questions. And so we thought it was appropriate to bring this just as a discussion item and allow the full board to weigh in on what concerns there may have. I think a number of us are, despite what we may have been personally interested in, have come to an agreement on what it is. And so making sure that we make the best of that project is what I think everybody is committed to. And certainly concerns or different ideas from our residents is most welcome. So that's why we supported this item to just really bring forward a discussion.
Treasurer Lafata.
There's been questions from the residents similar to what Trustee Joseph mentioned. Questions I can't answer. What happens when the water table recedes to where it was in years past, which could be anywhere from 3 to 4 feet. What does the fish habitat look like? What does the shoreline look like? What is the cost going to be to maintain that when there's fluctuations in water? The questions that have been asked, I can't answer it. Mr. Kadish has asked continuously, and he asked for an opportunity to address the board and have discussion on the fish habitat. So that's where we're at today.
Any further questions from the board? And then I'm going to bring it up to Director Sonnenberg and the consultants from OHM before I bring it up to the public. Director Sonnenberg and representatives from OHM. There is a letter, I believe, over on the table that explains some things, but I think Director Sonnenberg is going to run through some of these issues and try to answer some of the questions that you had.
I would love to run through this letter, but I don't know if it's permitted where we could give Mr. Kadich his time first, so we know, then when we bring the OHM team up, we can respond together. Is that okay?
If that's
Yes.
a better way for you to do it. Okay, we're going to move up to the public first. And then we have some written public comments as well. Yes. State your name and address for the record.
I live on Sutton. Reason I brought this up was it a week ago or so, or 2 weeks ago? It was announced that the project wouldn't start until September because they didn't want to disturb the fish that are spawning there now. And it led me to think, you know, basically, I've got two problems with this. First one I brought this up was because of what's it's going to look at long term. The picture on the front of the packet shows the seawall that started this whole thing. It's been this way for a number of years. Essentially, to fix this seawall, bring it all the way across, restore it the way it would, is probably, from what I saw in the estimates as part of the packet for the whole thing, it's probably $250,000 to fix that portion of the seawall, straighten it out, and restore the shoreline. Instead, I guess everybody went after the grants, and what you got was well, you don't have the picture of it now, but the picture was up there of the shoreline. I guess you can't see it a little bit. And what it shows is a breakwater, a couple of them, going out from the dock toward the center, and then from the other end of the park north, going south, and basically bringing out a breakwall stopping the water from flowing in to begin with. And then whatever they're gonna do to the bottom land to create a fish habitat, from what I understand, and putting down some type of material with plugs in it so that they can go in and plant some type of foliage, reeds, whatever. And looking at that, the first thing that comes to mind is the way this piece of water, not only that, but the whole Great Lakes varies over the years. I first came aware of how bad it was back in the 70s when I moved here, and I had a neighbor that was a pilot, and we used to periodically on Sundays rent a plane and just fly over the area. One of the times we flew over, it was on the opposite side of Anchor Bay, and it was what I found out was the St. Clair Flats. And we were flying over there. There's a road that was probably under 2 feet of water, and it had the telephone poles with the lines going out to what were cottages there, but the cottages were no longer on land. They were shored up around them. And I wondered what was going on, and that's what was happening, is that the lake varies probably over a cycle of 30 years. It can go from high to low and then back to high. The one page I included in there is the Great Lakes water levels over the years. If you look at the current ones, right now we're at the high level, which is, I think, 577 feet, almost 578 probably now, maybe higher, above sea level. But previously, between, say, 2000 and 2012, 2014, it was down at 572. So that's over 5 feet difference in the level of the sea, of the water over those years. When it was down in those years, basically we couldn't even get out the Salt River. They had to dredge the Salt River, only got one side of it. To get 5 feet so the boats could get out into the lake, they dredged it at a depth of 5 feet, out 1,000 feet, so they would have 1,000 feet of 5-foot water, which got them out to about 6 feet at the time when the levels were down. As I said today, they're up. They're over the seawalls in most places. You got all kind of problems. But if you look at that sheet too, if you look previously, back in, what is that, 65, 66, it was down probably even lower than it was 2000 to 2012. In the 30s, it was even lower than that. So this thing varies all over the place, and it's on about a 30-year cycle. And in between that 30 years, there's also a 7-year cycle that happens. And what concerns me, if you're going in with this fish habitat and you're blocking off the waves coming in, number one, it also mentions in there that you're concerned about circulation of water in there. And if you're concerned, who's ever quoted in this is even recommending that you do a study, probably some type of a computer study, to determine what type of circulation you'll have, not only now, but they probably should involve it when the lake goes down. It's gonna go down. We know that. It's done that for 100 years.
So about 30 seconds left on your 5 minutes.
Mr. Supervisor, I'd like to make a motion to suspend the board rules as it relates to the public speaking to allow the speaker 2 additional minutes.
Let's let him finish speaking and time run out. You got about 30 seconds. These are the board rules, so unless they get suspended.
Just like to make a motion to suspend, Mr. Supervisor, 2 minutes for the additional speaker.
Motion to suspend the rules to allow for an additional 2 minutes for this speaker only from Trustee Joseph. Is there support? Support. Motion by Trustee Joseph, support by Trustee Anderson to suspend the rules to allow an additional 2 minutes speaking for the resident at the podium. Discussion. Clerk Ray, please call the roll.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink. Trustee Vosberg. Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Motion passes. You have 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Said very much. Thank you. The third page, it's got a picture. It's from the balcony of my house. I'm on the Salt River, showing how high this water was this year earlier. I'm still dealing with water in my backyard. It came over my neighbor's seawall, came over my seawall. The next picture you see is the people across from me. They've got a deck right on the river, and that water is just about over that deck. Now, the next picture is that same deck showing the water down where it was in 2000. That's probably over 5 feet. Sure, it's the same at the seawall at the park. And the next picture shows the seawall on my side, on my neighbor's. So what I'm concerned about is not only the water circulation now, is when it goes down and what's going to happen to it. You're going to have one heck of a mess in there unless you know you're going to provide water through there or you're going to provide circulation. You're liable to end up, depending on how far this lake drops, you could end up almost on the seabed. I think I measured the other day out there, you got a little over 6 feet at the seawall at the park, and it's the highest it's been. Now, if it drops 5 feet or better, you're not going to have very much water out there. And you're going to have that big pile of rocks. I think I read that there's going to be 20 tons of rocks put in there to make that break wall. And in between that is where you're going to put your probably additional rocks for your fish. Now, some of us probably aren't even going to be around here when it drops, but somebody's going to get stuck with that. So I think you should take a look at that, either modify your plans or do something that somebody doesn't end up with just a big cesspool out there. Thank you.
20 seconds to share or to spare. With that, I'll bring it up to Director Sonnenberg and OHM to answer some of the questions that were posed. Director Sonnenberg.
Sure. So thank you for your time, Mr. Kadich. There's a lot to discuss. I want to be really, really clear on this. We've been talking about this for 2 years. We've had so much discussion on this. We have a fantastic team from all government agencies, and I've never been on board a team that is so driven to get this project, just because, and I want to just jump back a little bit and touch on the fact that this was never really started as a fish habitat. The idea of this project was to have a natural shoreline that people would enjoy going to. A seawall is a seawall. A bus of school kids doesn't take a field trip to go look at a seawall. If you get a fish habitat, it'll bring in people, it'll bring in revenue. And I know firsthand, I've toured projects in Boyne City, Petoskey, Charlevoix, all with the idea of a naturalized shoreline that brings people down. It's informal, it's inviting. The idea of this, then NOAA looked at it and said, hey, with that, you can create fish habitat. So it is a human habitat first, fish habitat second. But our shoreline is unique. We have an opportunity, which is rare, to take over 700 feet of shoreline and convert it in and bring the park basically out into the lake, which was a huge add for our team. That's why so many agencies fell in love. Typically, you get a lot of private owners that want to do this because of the grant opportunities, but they're really leery to fund because their fear is that what will happen in the future is it'll go back to something else that it's not intended for. So like I said, we got a lot of positive feedback on this, and I can't say that enough, and I'm sure our team from OHM and others will speak to this. But just so the public knows, because I know a lot of times, you know, in this job, what makes it tough is this is the first job I've been where I have 45,000 bosses. You know, everybody that pays taxes has an opinion. You're never going to make everybody happy, but we try to do the best we can. And I want everyone to know that I've lived on this lake since 4th grade, and I am not going to put something in there that turns into a cesspool. I've been fortunate enough to grow up in New Baltimore, moved out to Fairhaven, lived on Lake St. Clair, and now I live in Chesterfield. Love Lake St. Clair, been on it since 4th grade, been in Anchor Bay. So I know this water well, and I know how it travels. I'm not a scientist, but I put a lot of heart and passion and driving force into this project. What I would like to do is show you a little bit of background of how many times this project has been discussed and board action to kind of give you paint a little picture of history so you're aware of where we were and how we got here. This list that I'm going to go through will be a letter that's provided on our website. And what's nice about this letter is it has links to all the board meetings and all the presentations. OHM and GLC, which is Great Lakes Commission, Eric Ellis and his team, several people have been out here doing presentations and talking about this project. We will never be able to capture all those details, but I want you to have access to that information. So I'm going to read through this timeline briefly, but we'll post this on our website and pass out flyers if you guys want to go back and do a little bit more research. And then we'll touch on some of the other points that Mr. Kadich brought up. So first, obviously, this hard shoreline issue dated back at the beginning of about 2012. And we identify, obviously, there's been an unsafe issue and we wanted to come up with a plan. So the project goal was to repair the shoreline, the jewel of Chesterfield Township, and ensure safe access for the use of its residents and park users. We explored every option and all included, not even limited to a beach. We went through a beach, seawall replacement, softened shoreline, due to the fact that Brandenburg Park was developed jointly between the Department of Natural Resources and Chesterfield Township in 1973. It became evident early on that a beach permit would be hard, if not impossible. Sorry, I'm usually better at speaking, not good at reading, so bear with me. After eliminating the beach repair option, we turned to other available design options to troubleshoot the design that would create the best value to the taxpayers of Chesterfield and the basin. In coordination with Macomb County, state and federal agencies, connection was made with the Great Lakes Commission, GLC, on a grant opportunity for the restoration project. It became crystal clear that no grant opportunities or partnerships were available for seawall replacement project. However, there was substantial interest and excitement from all partners involving to soften the shoreline and create natural, environmentally friendly solution that would meet our goals and the goals of the Great Lakes Commission. A partnership was formed and focus was turned into presenting the options and to the Township Board for consideration. So back on December 17th, 2018, Chesterfield Township Board trustees, they authorized Chesterfield to move forward with a grant with the Great Lakes Commission for the engineering and design of this project. NOAA was part of the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, and they funded us $102,000 in design fees for this project. That was a unanimous board decision at that time. Moving forward into February 5th, 2019, Chesterfield Board of Trustees authorized to execute a contract with OHM and secure a design consultant. That was another unanimous decision back on February 5th, 2019. June 4th, 2019, Chesterfield Board of Trustees authorized to proceed with required water quality and habitat monitoring. So basically what we did is we did some pre-monitoring to look at the existing conditions and how those conditions would change before we even started the project. At that time, it became clear the excitement around the project was growing and the funding from the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative was highly likely. During the 2019 federal appropriations process, the board action to proceed with water quality and habitat monitoring coordination with engineering consultant from OHM was passed 4-3 on June 4th, 2019. On October 8th, 2019, Chesterfield Board trustees meeting with the project team authorized to proceed with a bottomlands conveyance at the time. At this time, we received notice that implementation and the construction of the project was secured. The team continued on the final touches of the design stage while coordinating the permit requirements with the state of Michigan and the federal partners in the Army Corps. That got unanimous support from the board on October 8th, 2019. I could go on and on. My point is that we've had numerous discussions and countless amounts of research on this project. And I know different people have different visions, and a lot of the questions I got, the frustrating part about this is instead of getting a call or an email, someone writes a letter to the paper, and that's how I found out about the question. My office is open. I would love to sit down with any resident. I made time with the resident to the north, the Martini family, and the resident to the south. The one to the south had concerns. After we sat and spent time together, he was on board. Now, I want people to understand, too, this is a hard picture to see, but I did something because a lot of the questions I got, understandably so, people can't really tell when you're looking at a print where that print falls in the water. A lot of the comments were, it's going to be halfway out, it's going to block boat traffic, it's going to block our view. All this was taken into consideration, so much to the fact that every plant that we're putting in this habitat, above the shore, the flowers and everything, nothing grows over 3 feet. Because our idea was when a child's out there fishing or kayaking, we want to be able to see a clear line of the shoreline, flowers can grow, kids can play, you can see everything. We want it to look somewhat natural with some paths going down to the shoreline. You'll see in this picture, barely, can you go back one, Dan? Sorry if I'm rambling, I get a little excited about this stuff. You'll see in this picture, barely, that by that first light pole there, I put this morning an orange, spray painted orange 8-foot 2x4. What that 2x4 there represents is as far as that breakwater is going to come off the shore. So you're at about 140 feet. What's hard to understand is when you're looking at that pier, it's 500 feet long. So when we were looking at this model, we did some calculations on circulation and water flow. And if you look at our habitat, the way the breakwaters are creased, it allows for that natural flow to come through. So much so that one of our team members, Val, who's the brains and the muscle of our team, has a great knowledge. She's the scientist of our team. She teaches a master's course at Lawrence Tech, and she's way, she's gonna, you got any technical questions, she's the one you want to talk to. But when we looked at the flow and the water movement, the purpose of these breakwaters were, I wish I could share some of the video I shared at the board. The heaviest damage we get is a direct onshore wind, which the fear was, and we've seen it happen in other projects, that it would damage the planting materials, and all we put those shoals to do was basically reduce wave action. They're not to pinch the flow, they're just to reduce wave action. If every time someone cut a canal in Lake St. Clair, it would fill with weeds, if that was the case here, you're gonna get a lot of natural flow here because most of it's downshore current, which comes up from New Baltimore, runs along Lake St. Clair, and travels across. I would also like to touch on this project that when we were doing this, just because I know a lot of you love the beach idea, I did a ton of research on beach, called health departments, toured beaches, went to every beach in Anchor Bay, took all the numbers when it comes to data from beach closures. And what you'll notice and you'll see, and I'd be happy to share with that data with you another time, is the concern we had from the start. First of all, we don't own the piece of property that this is being built on. The DNR does. We share our park with the DNR. The portion of property that the majority of the shoreline is going on is DNR property. So that's the first obstacle that you're gonna have to get over is building a beach on the DNR's property who's in love with the fish habitat and shoreline restoration. So that was a big obstacle, but we didn't wanna blow it off the table completely. So I personally went and did a ton of research. And I can tell you that I have the health department data from each and every beach closure. And I can tell you every time every beach closed for the last 10 years, because I went and looked at all that information. So I don't want you to think we completely took it off the table. It's just that was a higher road to climb. And when it comes to the seawall part of it, we also looked at that. That was today's numbers. Val just double checked this with the contractor. The 250,000 number, I believe that Mr. Cage stated, I don't know, we were more around the 500,000 from a local marine contractor. So there's a little bit more involved. So we were looking at it like, what's the best way to restore this shoreline, safest, best, and get some value there where we can, our goal originally was to use this too as an educational piece where people would want to come out and tour the shoreline and students could study. So and kids could fish, they could kayak, safe area. There's just I just can't stress enough how much thought. I apologize about rambling, but we just put so much thought into this. I'll be happy to answer any questions that you might have. And like I said, I apologize about the rambling. I just get a little excited about this project.
Back up to the board for round two, and we do have OHM representatives here as well. Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. The timeline that you laid out with regard to board action, I thought you did a nice job there. The initial approval by the board looks at the information that we know at the time. So if we are looking to explore a grant, we might give approval for that. Then the details of the grant come back and we give approval for that. Clearly, every step of the way, you engage the board because there's another expenditure of the residents' money. So a approval on the front end to investigate and so forth, I know that it's not you were laying out that this was a very detailed presentation over a 2-year period. I don't think you meant to say that because there was unanimous opinion and approval at the very front end, that all the rest of the approval should be unanimous throughout. There are different decision points that are made, and the research that you put into this, you're very proud of this. And I can hear the defensiveness, and you don't need it. It's not required. You did a great job all the way through. You brought very detailed people. The partners that the township has with the DNR and OHM have kept the township board apprised every step of the way. You said it yourself. People have different ideas. You and I could go off to the side, and I might suggest to you that if you were as enthusiastic about, this idea as the beach idea, I know you and the tenacity that you have, that was an option. I trust that you, vetted that and researched that and came back to the board with what you thought was the best idea. I don't see this as a controversial project in any way. There are some differing opinions about what it could have been, and that is no pun, water under the bridge. We are at the making this project the best project that it can be for decades to come. And the frustration that you had about learning, the mention that you made about the learning about this in the paper, it goes that way, Josh. It just goes that way. There are people that take to social media that say all kinds of crackers things. You can't control that. It is that time of year too, where people are going to make charges that are just erroneous, and I do appreciate setting the record in terms of where the board has been, what we've approved, and what your team has done. There is absolutely no ownership on your end to feel defensive about your work. Absolutely none. And I've been very engaged with you and my ideas and what about this, and I've never felt disrespected. I could bring anything to you with the belief that it would be properly researched. And any idea that I've ever brought to you was, hey, this is why this will work and this is why this won't work. There are one thing that I think that maybe you could touch on in the presentation that Mr. Kadich made specific to water levels declining potentially, and what consideration has your team made with regard to what happens when we don't have unprecedented high water levels, which is the time of construction. What do we do to take into account potential low levels in future years? And again, just wanted to close by saying thank you, truly from the bottom of my heart. You've worked very, very hard on this, as you do most projects you take on. So this is a great project, and I don't want you to feel defensive in any way.
If I could bring Valerie up to answer that question.
Sure, I would just like to say something really quick before the brains come up to the podium. I just want to say, it's a double-edged sword. During this process, high water, low water, we were fortunate that we did this in high water. Marysville, which our team toured, they did theirs in low water. So they only factored for so much water rise, and it actually changed the conditions. And that was the one thing when we met with them, they said, make sure you factor in for the high water. They lost some decorative features and areas because when the water came up, they got washed away. So I would say it's more of a blessing that we're planning this in high water than we are in low, because what we did is we kicked up the elevations on some of the rock walls to compensate for that. But I'll let Valerie and Stephen, if you got any questions for them, expand.
Thanks. Valerie Novice with OHM Advisors. I am the engineer of record for the project and also the project manager for OHM. The two things that I noted that were specifically of concern, let me back up for just a second. I think it's really great that you're actually having this discussion and the dialogue and being proactive in discussing and understanding the long-term operations and maintenance. It's detrimental to spend a lot of money or taxpayer money from the grant funding agencies to then turn around and just have a project not be maintained long-term. So great conversation to have, great questions. A couple of things that I heard were related to the waves being blocked by the breakwaters and what does that do to the circulation? Couple of things related to that. There are two primary drivers for circulation in this particular area. The first one is wind and the other one is waves. Wind is the primary driver for wave action along the shoreline, and there is both lateral movement of water, so following right next to the seawall, and also from a perpendicular direction. The breakwaters were designed, you will notice that there are no rock structures proposed coming perpendicular to the shoreline to allow that, that longshore current to maintain and operate and do that, to function as that circulation. There is also a hydrodynamic circulation analysis being performed right now, and the outcome of that will be to determine if there are any changes to the position of the breakwater to ensure the most effective circulation for the project. The other thing that was noted was the water levels. I can read you all the lake bottom and the long-term high water and the long-term average annual mean and the long-term low water elevations. The reality is it fluctuates. And so the design was done in such a way to accommodate that constant fluctuation. There may be some years where more of the rock structure is showing than other years, but the rock structures and the elevations of those were set such that it really addresses that long-term average annual mean that occurs within the lake, and to protect the shoreline with the investment that's been made. So I think those were the two main comments. So I'm happy to address additional comments, or if Steve has other things to point out.
Any, Mr. Silich?
Steve Sickledge with OHM. I'm a project manager with OHM and the client representative on this project here. Baylor, I think you did a great job, and these are all great points, and I really don't want to miss any of these, so I don't know if it's appropriate. I've got a list of probably about 20 or 25 on here, comments that maybe we can circle back with.
It can't hurt to do it now, because this will be back in front of us for an actual action item at the end of July. If you're comfortable doing it now, it can't hurt to do it now versus then.
Yeah, I think, Valerie made some great points on some of the big things, just to address when those water levels are low. Something that she didn't talk about was those depressions for the fish habitat. So we are actually digging into the existing lake bed. I think somewhere on the order of 6 to 8 feet. So that is going to be the area where two things happen. One, when water levels are low, it gives a place for fish to go and reproduce. Two is when there is sediment accumulation throughout the site, that sediment is going to potentially collect in those dredged out areas, and over time it still gives enough room to allow what we're trying to accomplish. So they were dug down with extra depth just to allow for some of that sediment accumulation to occur without incidents. I just want to also add that there are a lot of other project partners on this team. I know Eric Ellis from Great Lakes Commission, he's not here today. There is a much larger regional objective of this project, one of which is to get rid of some of the areas of concern in the Great Lakes, the depleting habitat due to pollution and a number of other factors. So there's a lot of research that's going on, a lot of studies that have gone on their end to show that these habitat development projects are improvements, not only economic, but also social and recreational. So there's some benefits that you're going to get with this project outside of just fixing the shoreline itself. And I think, I'm not sure if you know how to address mosquitoes. Obviously with vegetation greenery, that may bring, additional.
Make sure you do the conversation through myself.
So as far as mosquitoes, I don't know how many more, if any, it will bring to the project site with some of the vegetation. I don't know how much, we didn't go into much detail, but those plants were selected for low maintenance purposes. They were selected to kind of withstand some of the changes of lake levels, but they were also selected to provide some protection. One of the things that to that shoreline, one of the things that that we're also accomplishing here is, just replacing that seawall would be an option. It would be certainly a suitable option, but there is a lot of dredge material behind that existing seawall for when that pier was put in the 70s. It's a very silty, fine material. So as waves keep crashing on that shoreline, it's going to keep eroding that silt away. So one of the things that we kind of discussed as a benefit to the naturalization in the larger stone was that we're taking away that pore material and we're putting in something with some stability. So that's just another benefit that, long term, those stones are going to help protect that shoreline from additional erosion. Is there anything else that I missed that you can think of here? One thing?
There was also note about the project schedule and the project being delayed until October 1st to allow the fish to spawn. Due to the concern about the ongoing erosion of the shoreline, the Michigan Department of Environment, Great Lakes, and Energy has authorized or removed that prohibition of doing the work. So the work can essentially proceed as soon as all the paperwork is in order on that, which is a pretty unprecedented decision that they made. And I think that's it for me.
I'd like to just add one thing before we turn it back to the board. I just want to make sure that if this is your first time you've seen this project and you have questions, I encourage you to go to those links that we'll post on our website. And what you'll find out is, I just want to make sure to go back to the human habitat thing where you'll notice that we put things together where we have to put a temporary access road along the south end of the park. And once that access road is done for the project, we're actually going to asphalt that access road. And we want to have a nice winding path so the people that come down our bike path can come down the far end of the park, wind through and around, and get closer to the shoreline. Because as you know now, if you've been to Brandenburg, you got to park at one end and you walk through. So we are going to break that up, and that's the first phase of the many phases that we'd like to address, getting people down to that shoreline. It's a fantastic park, and I think this is just the first step in many to bring that area to what it should be.
Trustee DeMeg.
Since I'm the liaison to Parks and Rec, I see some of my members from Parks and Rec Commission here tonight, and if they want to speak at one time, they can. I myself think this is a great project. Mr. Kadich, you've been around for a while. I'm 62 and I've been in this township since I've been born. In 1965, 66, yes, there was a lot of beachfront. There was beachfront along the Salt River and things like that. But since 65, I've never seen beachfront in the area of the Salt River or anything like that. 72, 73, we had high water. 85, 86, we had high water sandbagging. 72, 73, sandbagging. 85, 86, sandbagging, and we're sandbagging now in 19 and 20. So the water definitely goes up, but it's never, at least in those 55 years I just figured out, it's never gone back to where it's been beachfront in the area of the Salt River around there. So I think this is a great project. Also, there's talk of a beach. Well, many of you know who've been around here a long time, New Baltimore's wastewater treatment plant is by the Dairy Queen in New Baltimore. That's the first canal north of the park. Granted, it's all treated and everything comes out. You get the southeast winds or the northeast winds, which causes us some shoreline problems. Or let's say there's a problem, they have to do a overflow dump. You don't know. Just like down in the south end, when the Oakland County or places dump in the Red Run drain, they come down the spillway. When the spillway dumps out, let's say untreated water or anything the first public beach south of the spillway is Memorial Park and the Shores. And I'm sure everybody's heard on TV how often Memorial Beach and the Shores closes. And from my years of my law enforcement years, when I used to drive a patrol boat for the county, we used to call, excuse my French, when the spillway would puke, you'd get logs and everything else flowing out of the spillway, and everything flows south. So, it all depends what happens up north. I just think this shoreline restoration is this is a gem. How many communities would love to have a park like this? Shores Park doesn't have as much property as we do on the lake. I'm not sure about the Grosse Points, but they have some big ones. But we have a jewel. I can remember as a small child when Brandenburg was first developed, all it was a bunch of dirt and swampland. They used to have a carnival there. And this was probably back in the 60s. I was a small child. Brandenburg's come a long ways. Those of you who haven't been around, or the ones, some of the old timers that might remember it from the township, we've got a jewel. We've got a beautiful place, and I think this is a fantastic idea. We've worked with a great group of people from state and federal. The OHM team, a great group of engineers. We've got three engineers that we've selected as this township board. We selected OHM to do this project. Myself, I think it's a great idea. Everybody else is open to their opinion. But for myself, I think it's a great idea. The team, from what they've said, worried on, different water levels. It's always going to vary. It's always going to vary. But the levels that I've lowest in my lifetime in 1965, that was beachfront around the Salt River. I've never seen that again. I haven't seen that. And those are just my opinions. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just one question that was brought up, or an issue that was brought up, was the water being locked. And I think you addressed it by talking about there's no wall that's perpendicular to the shore. And from the pictures that were shown, none of those walls aren't those piles of rocks are not connecting. They're open. There's open water all around them. Correct? Thank you. Kind of technical questions. It's not really a technical discussion. Thank you.
Treasurer Lafata.
In the spirit of the Plant Moran audit that we just reviewed today, when we originally contracted OHM for this project, there was a statement made that if our project cost that was quoted by our contractors exceeded the design, that we could pare down and meet the cost that was quoted and still have a quality project. That was a statement made because I made a note of it, brought it with me. I think right now we have some disparity between the grant amount and the township match and the project costs, unless that's been cleaned up. But right now, well, wait a minute, just one other thing. The other thing is Plant Moran deals in budgets, and when we go for full approval for this, we should understand what we're going to put in our budget to maintain this every year. So somebody should have an idea of what it's going to cost to do that. I'm not saying the project is bad, but I'm saying in the spirit of Plant Moran, we also have a fiduciary, responsibility to make sure we can contain the cost. Thank you.
Addressing the specific question on the apparent discrepancy between bid prices and the funded dollar amount, there was a discrepancy. So to just kind of educate everyone, bid prices came in a little bit higher than what the original grant fund award was provided. The regional partners, NOAA and GLC, went back and asked for additional funding from their partners. And because this is seen by those regional partners as a demonstration project for the region, they were able to successfully secure additional funding. So I think what you're going to see come next month is that presentation of that budgetary adjustment made from the grant funding agency. In terms of maintenance costs, it is absolutely necessary that the township consider long-term operation and maintenance. Anyone that has a garden and has plants knows that in order to keep it looking nice, there's a cost associated with that. The vegetation that was selected in the aquatic zone is really intended to be self-sustaining or lower maintenance, but certainly if requested, OHM can provide and will provide long-term O&M costs that can be expected.
Any further comments from the board? And maybe I'll go before we go for round two. I want to make it real clear that this project meets the objectives that I laid out when I walked in the door for this park, along with a number of other improvements that are going to go on there. It's important to note, one, the timeline that you'll see in the letter that we put together about how many times this has been to the board. And that's when the decision was made to abandon the fight, and it would have been a battle, and a big battle with the DNR, who we are a partner with on the ownership of the property, and the DEQ because of the various beach closures on Lake St. Clair and the problems with that to pursue a beach. It was virtually infeasible to go on that option. Hence, that gets kind of crossed off the list. The next one was a seawall. The seawall project, yes, is approximately $500 a square foot back in 2016 dollars before the market. Right now, that number's approximately 600,000, so that was looked at. But it didn't do anything to the actual shoreline besides the grass and all of that that's there. So when this vision was put forward, and the excitement that was quickly realized from NOAA, the Great Lakes Commission, the state of Michigan, Eagle, and the DNR about taking this chunk of shoreline, 700 feet on Lake St. Clair, and making it environmentally friendly, very environmentally friendly, safe, and a habitat for fish. And when they started dangling $100,000 ASAP for design, $1 million for construction, it got all of this board's attention, and I think it showed the unanimous support in the beginning of 18 when it started as a discussion, and as it's gone all the way through the process. So it would be very problematic after we made a commitment to NOAA for them to spend the $100,000 on design for this project. We committed to that. After they passed a bill through U.S. Congress to spend funds on the vision that we gave our word for, that we wanted to even think about backing off on this. Well, now here we are almost at the finish line, and there will be an action item on end of July with construction fast track to start hopefully the end of August. That will fully fund this project along with the tremendous onshore improvements that get made. Now, the details of this is still up for discussion. The scalability, if maybe one of these break walls are a little shorter and one of them are in a little different position, that final determination from the Army Corps is yet to be determined, and hence that's why that July 18th is there. I fully support this project. We have difficult decisions to make sitting up here. Of course, a seawall is going to be appealing to some. Of course, a boat in a harbor is going to be appealing, and of course, a beach is going to be appealing. But the decisions we had to make, and we all made it unanimously as a team, was to take a shot at this, and it's very evident with the amount of funding that Chesterfield is going to receive for this project, what it's going to do to our community. So I'm very, very proud of it, and I look forward to it actually coming for an action item, which will be at the last meeting in July. Back up to the board again, and then I'll go up to the public. Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'm glad you went first there because you touched on a few things that I wanted to really just provide some reassurance from constructive criticism into my interest in that shoreline. But I think Trustee Demink kind of captured the spirit of the entire board. He's been here, since a child. A number of us have lived in the community for decades. And I think unanimously we see Brandenburg as exactly what he described it, a jewel. There is no monopoly on vision for doing something with that park. And I think as part of the previous board, We were appalled at the, DPW guys having to go out with weed eaters and lawnmowers for the parking lot. So the previous board, before anybody arrived with their singular vision, the previous board recognized that park as being a very critical place to develop. And so infrastructure was in place prior to. There was no monopoly on vision as it relates to that. There's some disagreement, and there was considerable debate about what the full realization of this project could be. As we've talked about, there were those that were interested in a less, well, it really is, it's over. It's over. Whether you thought a pier with tons of boat slips and retail and restaurants and a downtown development authority as part of that, a beach, those are all gone. Those are not what we decided to do as a board. The questions before us now, and I think, again, it gets trickier as we get closer to August and then again in November, is to make sure that this project returns to the debates that we had very early on in our board, where we looked at facts and data and what was in the best interest of our residents. And so when you hear, Val, when you mentioned and you answered the question about, hey, there's some discrepancy, you said it was going to cost this, and now it costs this. Your answer was about as perfect as you can get, and the answer was yes, that's true, because we just didn't anticipate the unit costs being what they were. And when the overruns came, we were able to take this project in its current state to the funding stream and say, this is an active community that's engaged in this project. This is what it could look like, and it needs some additional resources. And because of the uniqueness and beauty and the gem that it provides, you got something that occurred that doesn't normally occur. Yeah, you're right. This needs some more support. And the funding was there. And it's not, that's usually not how it goes. It's just not. So it speaks to the vibrancy of this project. And there is room, and we should encourage this, and which is why my initial comments to you, Josh, were do not take a defensive posture in this, because there is no attack here. I think I'm pretty dialed into at least several members of this board, and this idea that there's a us versus them, and look what I did versus what they wanted to. That's not on my. I don't see that on those that I caucus with on a regular basis. There is full support, but it must also include concerns, because it doesn't do any good for everybody to go, oh, this is the greatest thing ever, and then 2 years after the election, it's a cesspool, it's a mosquito haven, it's not maintained properly, because we didn't have the courage to debate it, because we didn't want to be outed as anti this, or we have an obligation to discuss all the financial commitment that this project deserves, not just today, but for the foreseeable future, because we will have environmental changes with levels. What does that look like? How do we maintain that? All of those things are valid, and they should be welcomed. And so previous votes on whether or not you thought it was a harbor and whether it was a beach shouldn't be used to discredit people that bring those things forward. Because as Mr. Acciavatti said, I agree with you. This project has been approved by the board, and now our moving forward is not to figure out a way to pull the rug out from under it. It is how to make it the best project for the residents for years to come. And that will take some debate, and that will involve some discussions. And I look forward to the presentation when you bring forward the dollar amount, and we have that action in short order. So again, I do commend the team. And as I say, I felt completely respected with every suggestion, criticism that I've brought, and thank you.
Clerk Barry has a couple public comments that were emailed in to read into the record.
Public comment by Lynn Seeley at 49265 Monty Road. As a resident of Chesterfield Township, I am against the proposal for a fish sanctuary. Over the years, the water levels fluctuate, and in years to come, could when water levels go back down, and they will. It will be a mess, and I'm sure on the taxpayers to clean up. Let's leave the fish where they are in their biggest sanctuary they have, Lake St. Clair. Public comment by Walter Philpo, 33866 Osable Drive. I do not support a fish habitat proposed for the 700 feet of shoreline. I would prefer to see a beach area developed for the residents of Chesterfield Township. This would allow an unobstructed view of Lake St. Clair to be enjoyed by all. If there is any remaining funds, perhaps they could be used to repair and maintain the fishing pier. Additional public comment by Walter Philpo. I'd like to retract my previous submission regarding the use of the Brandenburg shoreline. After further investigation, I approve the current proposal of the fish habitat. This should enhance and protect the shoreline from future erosion. It will also promote increased fishing opportunities for those on the pier and non-motorized watercraft.
Thank you. This is not an action item. There's no further discussion or public comment. I would move on. Yes, you can.
J. Lang, 49762 Regatta. Although I didn't grow up on Anchor Bay, I'm raising 3 kids on the water right now. And last night we went for a bike ride to Brandenburg. And I have to tell you, I'm excited about the shoreline project. I have a 5-year-old son, and I didn't grow up fishing, but the thought of a controlled and safe, productive fishing environment is kind of exciting. You know, listening to all the stuff that's going on in Chesterfield, it reminds you to be proud of being a resident of Chesterfield. And if 2020 showed us anything, it's to be prepared for uncertainty, right? And as Trustee Domingue said, you know, you've got a great team in place, and I trust that when the uncertainty comes, and there will be some, whether it's water levels and who knows what, that you've got the right people in place. And so you guys have my full support for the restoration project in the natural environment.
Hi, I'm Sarah Arena, 53058 Rill Creek. I am here as a resident, but I'm also the chairwoman on the Parks and Rec Commission. And so I just want to let everyone know that as residents who serve on the Parks and Rec Commission, we have looked through this project, we have vetted this project for all residents, and we all are super excited about it and can't wait to see the shoreline restored and fish habitat there. And we also appreciate that many people have lots of opinions. We certainly have to look at the cost, and just like everything in my house, everything has to be maintained. There is a cost associated with it. We'll have to look at those things as well, but it shouldn't delay anything that happens. And so I certainly hope in July that this is voted and is starting to go in August so that we can all enjoy it. I really would have loved using it in March and April and May when I had to do outdoor activity and I was staying away from people. So thank you, and I hope that everyone will continue to support it and move it forward.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Mr. Supervisor, if I may bring up a point of order, there was no roll call vote taken to open discussion after the motion was made by Treasurer Lafata and supported by Trustee Joseph. And although there is implied consent with the discussion that ensued, the Clerk's Department and Clerk would like to request a roll call vote to clarify the record.
Can it be a voice vote?
Yes, it can be a voice vote.
Do a little bit of house cleaning. Motion by Treasurer Lafata, support by Trustee Joseph to open discussion on item 7B. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by saying nay. Do we need a motion to close discussion? This might be the first time we do one and the other.
Supervisor, I'd make a motion to close discussion on regular agenda item B.
Motion by Trustee Joseph to close
Second.
discussion. Seconded by Trustee Domingue. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed by saying nay. Discussion is closed. Moving on to item 7C.
Item 7C is a discussion by the Township Board on MDOT's request to see if the township is interested in matching all traffic light signals along the Golden Corridor by installing a mast arm in lieu of a box span traffic light signal at westbound M59 and Marketplace Boulevard. The mast arm would be an additional cost of $22,435 that would be at the expense of the township from GL number 101446970.000.
Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion to approve as stated.
Motion by Clerk Barry. Support by Supervisor Acciavatti. Director Cottington.
So just to make sure on this item, I know it says discussion, but like I said,
Assistant
I
Director.
know his voice changed.
Oh, this, our motion was to approve.
To approve, yeah, let's make sure it was to approve the mast arm, because there does need to be a motion to do that. So basically, the golden corridor is going to these mast arms. I was told by the county that both Clinton Township and Macomb have approved theirs last week, so we are the last one remaining. So it's just up to this board if they want to move forward with it or not. So there's a mast arm which goes over like Romeo Plank going west, or there's the standard box culvert, which we have now, or box culvert, the box span traffic light, which is what we have now, just be updated. But the mast arm will have the nice street sign over and look a little fancier.
If you drive down, oh, go ahead, Trustee Busberg.
Thank you. When I saw this on the agenda, I was thinking, why in the world do we need to have a fancy traffic light at the cost of $20,000? Then after thinking about it, everyone else along the way, well, it's like we have to keep up with the Joneses, but it's kind of irritating. Why isn't MDOT paying for it? It's their road.
They're paying for most of the cost. This is like, I think the cost was 100 and I don't have the exact number, but we're just paying the difference between the box and this mast arm.
To put that in at that intersection is $100,000
Yes.
or whatever big number?
Yes.
Really?
Yes.
Oh,
So
okay.
we're just paying the difference between the two options.
All right, thank you.
Yep.
We're actually playing the upgrade from the standard device that would just hang a light to the decorative, that add the character to M59. And you see it going from here all the way through to Utica, the black mast arms in front of Lakeside Mall. There would also be an upcharge to local communities that would want, say, brick paver crosswalks in certain areas. So the local communities pay a local share for the aesthetics, I guess. We have one of these. Clinton and Macomb have got tons at every single intersection. It is something I support for the vision of that entire corridor, and is something that is in our budget under the roads department. So, Trustee Domingo.
Just a quick question. I know, so we're talking right there by Bob Evans, right?
Yes.
Okay. What about, I want a point of clarification. What about the light at 94 and Hall Road? Are we just gonna leave that one the same then?
The MDOT, oh, you can answer this. The MDOT project.
The only one they have on the list is just the one right there, Marketplace. Yes.
The repaving project is not going that far, so it's, I believe it's stopping before.
Just ask. Westbound side only.
Okay.
Yes.
You're getting an entire new M59, by the way, to that point. Any further, Trustee Anderson?
Yeah, thank you. I thought Trustee Domingo was going to ask this one. I also am in favor of this at that location, as long as it's golden corridor, as long as there's not a request for a large plywood O or A to be erected along that area. Thank you.
It's gonna be a C.
Any further comments from the board? Motion by Clerk Barry, support by Supervisor Acciavatti to approve item 7C as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Clerk Barry, aye. Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Domingue.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Motion passes. Item 7D.
Item 7D is a recommendation by Public Works to adopt Resolution 2020-23, in which the Great Lakes Water Authority Industrial Pretreatment Program now includes PFAS, PFOA minimization.
Move to approve.
Motion by Trustee Vosberg.
Support.
Support by Trustee Joseph. Assistant Director Johnson.
All right, so with this resolution, Great Lakes Water Authority is currently already monitoring monitoring for PFAS. What they're doing is as a part of their industrial pretreatment program, which is called industrial waste charges, or you'll see IWC on a lot of our sewer bills and such that you see from Great Lakes. Basically, in any industrial complex, they test their sewage to make sure that nothing detrimental is going down our sewer and causing harm. All they're basically doing on the treatment process is adding PFAS to that list. So this is just a minor, addition to that program. I did speak with them. They said at this time, there is no additional cost to the IWC charges to the businesses. So right now it will be the same prices they're paying now. Not to say there's not going to be a future cost, but as of right now, the cost should stay static based on what they're doing.
Treasurer Lafata.
I looked at some of the data in the packet and I sorted out the Chesterfield facilities that were mentioned. Their testing in 2018 shows
Not detected.
no content.
Correct.
What I did notice is we do have surrounding municipalities like Lenox that have PFAS, and actually Selfridge National Air Force Base does, I'm not sure, but does Lenox flow through the same sewer system in Selfridge that Chesterfield does?
They flow through the, I guess you'd call it the lakeshore interceptor, not through our actual sewer that we own. They go through the county sewer.
Lennox does. Lennox does Selfridge.
Okay, I apologize. So Lennox does.
Lennox Township does go into the same sewer.
Because they have two facilities that do have
PFAS.
Yes. In fact, they have three facilities that do, that are contributors right now. And then to the south of us, we have Selfridge National Air Force Base that's a major contributor, one of the largest in the area. And I just wonder how that would affect this process, if any, for the township.
Right now, Selfridge has their sewer treated through the city of Mount Clemens, which is discharged through the Clinton River after it's cleaned up. And right now, Selfridge is spending millions to try and clean up some of these PFAS that are on the property out there. If you've seen some of the surface work going on, that's exactly what they're doing, trying to clean a lot of that up. But we are fortunate to say that our drinking water most of our drinking water comes from Lake Huron, and it is not detected in our drinking water at this time. But not to say that they're putting way more influence and study into these PFAS to see what they can do to help control. It's not that easy of a byproduct to break down. It likes to stay in the system. But this is what they're working on.
I just want so if Lenox Township does flow into the same system and the system's tested, we're not going to get dinged for it, hopefully, because our facilities seem to have no PFAS detected. I would hope.
I would hope not also.
Thank you.
Any further questions from the board? Questions from the public? Motion by Trustee Vosberg, support by Trustee Joseph to approve item 7D as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye.
Thank you.
Item 7E.
Item 7E is to approve a recommendation by Public Works to award the construction of the cured-in-place pipe portion of the 2020 Sanitary Sewer Rehabilitation Project to the lowest responsible bidder, Inland Waters Pollution Control, Inc., at a cost of $190,100. Public Works is also recommending the approval of the CIPP total project cost of $240,970.70 from GL number 591-000-150-000 and 591-541-801-000.
Do you have a motion?
Motion to approve as stated.
Motion by Clerk Berry.
Support.
Support by Trustee Vosberg. DPW Director and Assistant Director, you're monopolizing some time here
I'll
tonight.
speak on this a little bit. So we had came to the board previously a few months back and showed you some of the repairs that needed done in a presentation. So when we did put this out for bid after your approval, we were fortunate enough to get 4 bids. I'd have liked to seen more, but 4 is good. And we're very happy with the number of 4 bids. The inland waters, the actual bid came in underneath the engineer's estimate, so we're happy about that. So we're hoping we can get this project done, completed on time and under budget. And these are mostly sewer repairs. They are all sewer repairs. They are spot linings where they repair a small chunk of the inside of the pipe, and they're full length linings that they repair the complete length of the pipe. And that's why there's 2 different account numbers that this is going to account for, because the ones we're putting the full lining in will become an asset, where the repairs are just a repair and not a full asset. Thank you.
Questions from the board? Comments from the public? Motion by Clerk Berry, support by Trustee Vosberg to approve item 7E as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye. Motion prevails.
Thank you.
One more for you at item 7F.
Item 7F is to approve a recommendation by Public Works to have High Tech add 6 exterior door proximity door strikes with wiring to the security camera and proximity card readers project at a cost of $13,299.40, as well as approve the additional project costs of $2,518.34, totaling $15,817.74 from GL number 101-265-975-000.
Do I have a motion to approve? So moved. Motion by Trustee Anderson,
Second.
support by Clerk Berry. Discussion.
Okay, so with this, this would be the, I guess, the final section of this proximity card and the security camera project. So the $2,518 is the cost overrun for the original portion of the project, which I kind of discussed. I've discussed with Treasurer Lafata, Supervisor Acciavatti, and there was, when this got just after this got approved, there was some adjustments that were made to this building that ended up requiring the purchase of additional hardware to make this project come to fruition. So we just had to purchase that additional hardware and such. So those costs were made available and were also a part of the monthly packet you guys were given for the project. So it kind of is stated on the bullet points in there. So I'm just looking to get that approved along with this to make sure I'm following the purchasing policy. But the 13,000, so minor oversight on my part, but the goal was to have both doors on all of the entrance doors coming to the building to have the store strike. Right now, the bid only had one of each of the doors. I'm just looking to add the second door. So when the schedule opens at 8 o'clock, closes at 4:30, both doors open and lock simultaneously. I apologize for that, but this would just add those 6 doors and we'll be complete.
Questions for DPW? Comments from the public? Oh, Trustee Joseph.
It really wasn't a question so much as a comment. The $2,500 overrun, and then the way you outlined it in the packet for the board and explained it was most appreciated. Sometimes overruns come up, and rather than just have it be, well, that's the nature of the, you went the extra mile and included it in the packet. So I just wanted to say thanks for that.
No problem.
Any comments from the public on item 7F? Motion by Trustee Anderson, support by Clerk Berry to approve item 7F as submitted. Clerk Berry, please call the roll.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Clerk Berry, aye. Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg.
Aye.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Motion passes. Item 7G.
Item 7G is a recommendation by Treasurer Lafata and Trustee Anderson to amend APO 04-2018 Board Rules and Procedures.
Do I have a motion?
Motion.
Motion by Treasurer Lafata,
Support.
Support by trustee Anderson. Discussion.
Treasurer Lafata?
Actually, this isn't really an amendment, really, it's a trying
Treasurer
to,
Lafata, I don't know which microphone you're in. I can't hear you down here at all.
I'll get a little closer. Actually, this is trying to actually clarify what's already written in the board rules. It specifically states that no board member wishing to speak shall first obtain the approval of the chair. Each person who speaks shall address the chair. No member shall speak a second time on any motion until all members have had the opportunity to speak once. Members shall address the board, not the public. Taking that in consideration and in the spirit of our ethics policy that was passed at the last board meeting, Township Supervisor is the chair, but he's also a member of the board and is considered a member of the board and really shouldn't speak the second time until all members of the board have had the chance to at least speak once. What happens is the interruption after each board member's comments to interject comments or opinions is time consuming at times, and sometimes is not, according to our ethics policy, it really isn't ethical to interject one's opinion after one of the board members had a chance to talk, interject the opinion after one board member has to talk. Winds up being time consuming, and it really invites unnecessary debate. And that is why I'm trying to clarify this. I think board meetings would be a lot smoother. They would be more congenial, and I think they'd be more ethical in practice.
Any further comments from the board? Trustee Anderson.
Treasurer Lafata hit it right on the head, and I have nothing to add to that. Thank you.
Any further comments? Trustee Joseph.
Just wanted to point out, I think the conversation when Treasurer Lafata brought this is, I think for those who don't attend a lot of meetings and are here tonight, I think you have an example of a great meeting. So far, I don't want to jinx this, but so far you have opportunity to present a differing opinion. Maybe you don't agree with a particular motion, and the way the process goes is you take turns. For or against, different board members get to say. Sometimes board meetings we get very, very spirited, and one board member speaks, and I think Treasurer Lafata pointed out that we have to go through the chair. We have to go to the supervisor to request permission. That's how we are acknowledged. And so if all communication then flows through the chair, and then each comment ends with the chair being able to respond with a 1 or 2 word sort of wrap up. So the ones that have been the most troubling is somebody makes an opinion that isn't necessarily in agreement with you, Mr. Chairman, and the response will be, okay, who wants to deal with this ridiculous statement? And that is one that I usually bite on real hard, and then we go completely sideways. So again, I thought it was a good addition to the APO. It brings more, sort of written requirements to stay in order. But truth be told, if people are in objection to this, it really doesn't matter because it rests with your stewardship of the meeting. So whether or not it's adopted formally, or whether it's just something that you recognize in your chairing of the meeting, I think it lends itself to better meetings. So I support the addition to the APO, and again, it's not an entire game changer for me. I just thought it was a great idea. Thank you.
Any further comments? Trustee Vosberg.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'm not in favor of this. The board supervisor is by state statute the chair of our meetings. I don't think we want to hamper our board chair from being able to make comments as needed. Sometimes it's even for clarification. And I just envision if this rule, while it sounds innocent, would also be, could also become used to not allow any comments to be made that would maybe be procedural in nature or corrective or something like that. I've chaired many meetings in my time as an elected official, and I've never had any kind of anything close to this where the board chair was held back by ability to speak when needed.
Any further comments from the board? Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I think that we are on the right track to say that the language is already present in order for this provision to be enacted without its addition. I think that perhaps being more mindful of as we're conducting meetings, regardless of who's chairing, oftentimes it is the supervisor, but sometimes I do chair meetings as well, or other members have chaired meetings as well. So I think this would address anyone who is chairing the meeting, and I agree with Trustee Vosberg. I think that it would be problematic, and I think the language, and I also agree with Treasurer Lafata, the language is already there, and I think just whoever is chairing the meeting needs to be more mindful of that. And I think that interjected comments from, quite frankly, any board member should be perhaps monitored a bit more closely, as Trustee Joseph said, to have a smoother and more meaningful discussion in meetings. So while I certainly agree with it, because the spirit, if you will, as Treasurer Lafata has said several times tonight, the spirit of things, the spirit of this is already here in the language. I don't think it's necessary. But I do agree with Trustee Vosberg that perhaps if we were to actually add it, it could be problematic for any member of this board who would chair the meeting. So I don't think it's necessary. I don't feel a need to support this item at this time.
Any further comments from the board? Trustee Joseph.
Just clarification on Trustee Vosberg's comments. The proposed addition does not speak to directional or procedural comments. It speaks to a second time or a third time on any motion, and it has to do with interjecting comments of opinion, and that is what is stated in the addendum. So again, I don't think we need to debate it forever. We all know, I think we would all agree that when a board member speaks and the chair says, who wants to receive that ridiculous comment, that would not be, conductive, part of a business meeting, that's what the spirit of this addresses. If you're free to say it, but it should be seen as your comments in round one. An assessment of another board member's comments is not procedural at all. It is an opinion and warranted, but not each time a differing opinion is received does the chair get to say, that's not that's not helpful, or that's foolish, or that's ridiculous. And that was the spirit of this. But again, if that is perceived as business and that's an acceptable practice, and we don't need to limit that because we already have the ability to do that, I accept that. That's fine.
Any further comments from the board? Treasurer Lafata.
I can understand, but if the comments are not germane or they're unethical, I think if this doesn't change, they should be called out. Thank you.
Any further comments from the board? We're having a good meeting, so I'll just say people can watch the former meetings and judge the behavior of your board as you deem fit. Any comments from the public on item 7G? Motion by Treasurer Lafata, support by Trustee Anderson to approve item 7G as submitted. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Demink. No. Trustee Vosberg. No. Supervisor Acciavatti.
No.
Clerk Barry. No.
Motion fails. Item 8 is the addendum. There are no addendum tonight. Item 9, public comment. If you wish to make a public comment, please state your name and address for the record, and limit your comments to 5 minutes.
Hi, my name is Ken LeCarry, and I live at 52799 North Weathervane here in Chesterfield. Recently been brought to my attention that Treasurer Lafata, in the last 4 years, as he's been appointed as the treasurer. My question to you, sir, is have you completed all the required classes to become a treasurer for Chesterfield Township? On record, sir.
There actually is no back and forth up here.
No, I'm just.
And that's kind of our rules, and then
Okay,
we'll,
I apologize.
the board will do the
So
best they
then
can
let
to
me
answer
readdress
when
the
they're done.
question. I'll readdress the question. In the Township of Chesterfield, it's my understanding that our treasurer is supposed to complete classes to be certified as a treasurer.
Address the board. I'm
Oh, I
sorry.
apologize. Okay, let me do this a third time. Supervisor Acciavatti, is it a requirement for the treasurer to complete classes to become certified as a treasurer in Chesterfield Township? Is that a requirement?
We're not gonna have a back and forth, so that,
Oh, we're not?
our rules are, you have five
Okay,
minutes, you have
I
5
thought I
minutes
could
to
ask
ask
the
all your
board.
questions and speak to all your questions, but you can't speak to the audience.
Okay.
Or you can't,
Okay.
there's no back and forth.
No,
with
no
the board.
problem.
I know,
All right, so I'll just say this. I had a meeting with some constituents here in the community, and it's my understanding that our treasurer in Chesterfield Township has had 4 years to complete classes to become a certified treasurer. It's my understanding, I thought I was going to be able to ask the board this evening, that it has not been done. And so I guess my concern is, if we're going to take an oath of office and represent constituents in our community, if there's a requirement to become qualified, which means, in my opinion, for them to understand their job, execute their responsibilities, that they should complete those classes. Now, I asked Treasurer Lafata prior to the meeting today if he's indeed completed those classes.
Sir, please address us.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you gotta look at us.
I asked
No, no, that's what
Treasurer
he means, sir.
Lafata if
I'm
he
sorry
completed
for
the
interjecting.
classes that were required of him, and his response was, I'm not going to answer your question for you. So with that being said, I want to know, well, I guess I can't ask the question, but it's my understanding that we spend approximately $40,000 a year mailing out water bills. With that understanding, it was brought to my attention that there has been, I'll just say constituents or other board members that have actually gone to Treasurer Lafata and offered their, we'll say, help, maybe share their processes, what they've done to streamline some of their processes here in the township. And they offered help Treasurer Lafata streamline his process so we can cut back on the taxpayers having to pay $40,000 a year. Clerk Barry mentioned earlier about digitalizing, or if you will, we'll go electronic. So it's my concern, just my understanding, that this hasn't been done yet, and you've had 4 years to streamline that process. And I find that to be sad because it's our money. Last meeting, I understand there was I believe it was called Code of Ethics and Statement of Values, that all of our board members, it's my understanding, were asked to sign. And it's my understanding that Treasurer Lafata, Trustee Anderson, and Trustee Joseph voted it down. Now, these are ethics and a statement of values that I don't think is unreasonable. I think we should all live by ethics. I think we should all live by a statement of values, and especially hold our appointed officials, or excuse me, our elected officials accountable for. And if that's not being done, I guess my question as a constituent in your community is, why was it voted down by each of you?
30 seconds left, sir.
All
Just
right.
give you a heads up.
Thank you very much for your time.
I said 30, not 0.3.
Oh, no, I'm good. I'm good, thank you.
Any further comments from the public?
Joe Kadich again. You didn't sign in, whoever that was before me. Didn't hear me? Anyway, first of all, I'd like to take the opportunity to talk about the ethics question that came up last week. And if anybody had it, it was three pages of, I'll do the best thing I can. There was no thing in there that says, if I do something wrong, this is what it is, and this will be the harm I'll have. It just, it's like I'm for God, country, and apple pie. That's all it was. There's nothing in there that said, if you do this, you're wrong and you'll be chastised for it. And that's why I think they basically did not sign for it, because it doesn't mean anything. The other thing is, even though I had 5 minutes or 7 minutes to talk about the park, I really did have two options when I came up here. One was to point out what I saw as forthcoming problems. The second one is, you have a chance to look at this thing. Everybody said they're committed to go, and it's going to be done. The thing I didn't get a chance to say is, basically, Trustee Deming brought it up. He said, we've got a jewel here. Now, you're putting in something that is not going to give any water rights or give any accessibility to that water, swimming or any other way, because of this whole thing is taking up that whole part of the shore. You've done this. You said, we're the board. We've decided to go this. What I would suggest is to go out, canvass your constituents, and see what they want. The reason I say this, I went to that park. I usually go there every day walking my dog, but I went there specifically when it was really warm last week. The only cars that were in that parking lot had trailers behind. The only people that were there were the people that launched their boats, and that was it. There wasn't a soul in that park. But at the same time, I read in the Macomb Daily the next day, they had full capacity in New Baltimore. Now, I don't know what it takes to get people into that park, but I know it's not going to be a fish hatchery. That's not going to draw. If you go there, you're not going to see fish. The only way you'll see fish is if you got hopefully a glass bottom boat or something and go over it that way. Other than that, all you're going to see is water. And you're only going to be seeing that water if you're on the edge where they're going to put the walk. Because before that, they're putting all the brush and trees and everything else. Now, there isn't a soul here that lives in the water that would say, I'll take that and put it on my house. I don't think you would, Trustee Deming, put it in front of your house and put the fish hatchery and block the whole view with trees and brushes. I know everybody's committed to this, but I think you really ought to look at canvass the people to say, what do you think we should have? Do you want a fish hatchery with a nice looking park, or do you want to have a place where we can at least try to get some swimming and whatever else we can put in there? I suggest everybody do that before you vote on this whole thing. You can even put part of it as a fish hatchery. But don't cut everybody off from entrance to the water. You're doing the opposite, looking at what you're doing with the paddle park and wanting to buy that property on Hooker Road, because the first thing you said when you bought that property is to put a pier at the end of the Salt River on Hooker Road. Now, you're doing that on these projects, but on this project, you're saying, stay away. Thank you.
Any further public comment?
Terry Weston, 28605 Wales Drive. I got a quick question for the board. You guys speak about ethics, but I find it quite disruptive and saddening to watch these members of this board bash fellow board members, talking about being unethical and part-time clerks. You need to police up yourselves and do what's right and stop bashing your fellow board members and be bullying. That's not the way you do politics. Dirty politics is not okay. If you have a problem with that person, you take it to that person. You don't blast it all over social media for others to see. It's really disgusting.
Any further public comments?
Hi, Adam Janish, 34014 Bodies Drive. Want to thank the board for their service. I know it's not an easy job, and thank the leadership to appreciate the leadership. Being a leader is not easy and it's risky, and I think I see the things you guys are doing, and I think it's good. You know, the advantage of bringing some walkability to that park. I grew up here since 1975, been to the park my whole life, and it's underutilized. You know, and I think what you guys are doing, you're on the right track. And it goes to marketing and it goes to branding, and we need that here in Chesterfield with the waterfront and with the park. And going to the park, speaking based on what the young lady just said too, branding and marketing. The board, speaking out of school a little bit, I don't come to a lot of meetings, but I watch them on TV, and I live in the community a long time. The board has a reputation for decades of not getting along and fighting, and it's embarrassing. It is, and I think we all would appreciate it if you guys work together to accomplish the goal. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comment?
Pamela Sonnenberg, 49785 Compass Point Drive. Just to speak to Mr. Kadich, I noticed that as well, the park with all the trailers and the trucks over the weekend. And
Oh, please address.
I'm sorry.
Speak to the board.
I apologize. I did as well see trucks and trailers at the park over the weekend, and I realized that, first of all, if you go downtown Detroit, you saw a lot of buildings down there, warehouses and stuff, all along the waterfront. We have beautiful waterfront here, and as many people said, is underutilized as far as I'm concerned. I work for anchor-based schools, and my husband Josh who spoke about having field trips and stuff, things that we take our students to other counties to see. We can come here to our own parks and see like a natural habitat and things. Probably why no one was on the playscape area is because there's COVID-19. I wouldn't take my kids to the park to play on the playscapes right now, but I would take them for walks and the scenery there. It's a beautiful area. And down Hooker Road, that would be a beautiful area along the water there. And the Paddle Park is going to be amazing. I speak to a lot of parents. I know a lot of parents working in the schools. I talk to parents and students. I don't know anybody that's not excited for all the things coming to the township. And as far as the beach is concerned, I grew up in Harrison Township since 1984. I went to Metro Beach all the time. The walkways and the rocks there, the natural shoreline there, gorgeous. I mean, you can walk there. You can't swim right there at those rocks. There's a beach. It was always closed. So, I mean, I wanted to say I love what's going on, and I appreciate that you guys are up here and you take the hard questions and you ask the hard questions. But as far as I'm concerned, the people I speak with love what's going on, and we're excited for the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further public comments?
Carrie Whitfield, 50112 Bauer Drive. Also work for the treasurer's office. I know there was a question about the amount of people at Brandenburg this year. I handle all the park bags. I do all the deposits for those bags every year. This year, yes, it's been a low turnout. Part of it is COVID, part of it is it's under construction. You're always going to have the boats there. And actually, I was quite surprised that we had as much money coming in for that park as we do with all the things happening. But on a normal summer, every weekend, every pavilion is sold out and rented. Every weekend, the parking lot is packed. That park is utilized by this community, and it needs to stay that way. And I do not think a beach will work because, as everybody said, E. coli. It'll be shut down. It's just not going to happen. Not to mention the liability. I don't know how forthcoming this place is with liability for a beach. Probably not a good idea. And the DNR owns that section, so they're probably not gonna go with it. Another thing I wanna say is I go all over the state to a lot of DNR access sites. They're beautiful. People love them. And with all the building and things that are going on in every town, we have to protect some of our natural areas. You have to make those spaces available, and people will come. Schools, families, they will go to it. So I appreciate that you guys are going forward with this very much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Andrew Janish. I live in 34014 Lotties Drive. I personally love fishing, and I think this whole Brandenburg project would be an awesome idea because when you fish Lake St. Clair, it is one of the best bass lakes to fish on. And when you fish for bass, you fish rock walls and shoreline, and there's not a lot of natural shoreline on Lake St. Clair. You have to go to the other side of the lake to find any natural reeds or in certain spots, just little patches of property that hasn't been developed to find rock wall to fish on. And I think bringing back rock wall and structure and all what is necessary and needed to support fish habitat and life would be awesome. And as stated by all the other people like Mr. Sonnenberg that spoke and the people that were from the lake, and they made it very clear that it's not going to obstruct views, because I know a lot of people don't necessarily fish when they go to the park. They want to have their view, but they made it clear that the plants and the rocks and all that has been taken into consideration when they're building this. They're not going to make it so you can't see the lake. I mean, you're going to be able to see the lake. That's what the whole point of going to the park is. And you got a 500-foot pier to go walk on too. Also, I just wanted to make that clear. Again, I don't know. Thank you.
Thank you. Well done, young man. Any further comments from the public?
Good evening. My name is John Spica, 53978 Connor Drive. At the last township meeting on 6/9/20, Clerk Barry at the end of the meeting made a statement that she said that everybody that spoke tonight is running for office. Well, I'm John Spica, and I'm running in the upcoming election to be the next Chesterfield Township Treasurer. What brought me to the podium to speak is what I heard from my own ears in the room. I wasn't up at the podium campaigning, but I was asking the tough questions as a concerned taxpayer in this township that needed to be answered that weren't. When Clerk Barry said that everybody up at the podium was speaking was running for office, what she was doing was creating a red herring, a distraction from the real issues that were brought up about her. What were the real issues that caught my attention? First, Clerk Barry, along with Trustee Vosberg, put forth a resolution to adopt a code of ethics and values for the township. I have no objection to a code of ethics. I believe by leading by example, and that's the Spica way. In the preamble to the Chesterfield's Code of Ethics and Values, it says, as a representative of Chesterfield Township, I will be ethical. In practice, this value looks like 1, I am trustworthy, acting with the utmost integrity and moral courage. 2, I am truthful. Do what I say I will do and dependable. 3, I make impartial decisions free of bribes, unlawful gifts, narrow political interests, financial and other personal interests that impair my independence of judgment or action. And 4, I am fair, distributing benefits and burdens according to consistent and equitable criteria. In summary, the key words are ethical, trustworthy, truthful, dependable, and fair. Now, how does Clerk Berry in good conscience put forth a code of ethics and support the motion when Clerk Berry was accused of and has been working part-time hours, a consistent pattern for many years, in some circumstances, I've been told less than 10 hours a week, and still collecting a full-time salary at the taxpayer's expense, Chesterfield Township's expense. Is this someone who is ethical, trustworthy, and reliable? What about the accusations about Clerk Berry renovating her office? An office that she's barely there, which, by the way, I've been told is over budget. Does this sound like someone that is trustworthy again? Truthful, dependable, and fair to you? Nope, not to me. Chesterfield Township, we can do a lot better, and we will. Thank you.
Any further public comment?
Yeah, hi, Justin Cabbage. I live on Bay Lane. I wasn't planning on coming up here, but boy, we got an election year or something going on this year. Hey, I just wanted to make a comment that about a year ago, I came up to these guys, I had an issue, and it was Mr. Lafata that told me to come to this board meeting and just keep coming, keep coming. They will listen, they will listen. And they did. Every one of these guys helped me out. It was Joseph, Anderson, Lafata was right on my team, but every one of you guys supported me. So since then, I've been coming here for a year. I've been to all these meetings, but I see a lot of you guys here, but I don't see you here every meeting. There's only a few faces I see every meeting, and I can sit here and tell you that if it wasn't for Mr. Lafata crossing the T's, dotting the I's, explaining, questioning everything, our township would be in debt. I hear you guys making comments about, I hear people making comments about him right now, but I'm like, that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard. I just wanted to I wanted to stand up here and say, as for somebody who's been coming here for a year and listening to these board members, watching them fight, watching them go at each other, for what it's worth, every one of you guys cross-check each other, and because of it, our township is better, for what it's worth. That's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Any further comments from the public? Bring it up to the board, Trustee Anderson.
Some interesting comments from our public. Some thoughtful ones. Only one I'm going to address right now is this ethics issue that came up at the last meeting. I believe it had 8 sections to it. Clip art type items. They sounded good. I really felt strongly that a 9th item about honesty should be added, but the interpretation was that's already intrinsically included in it. No, I did not sign it. Neither did the other 2 members that one of the speakers talked about. It wasn't something that was to be signed. No one signed it. I did not support it, although I had belief in it. I did not support it because I don't believe it was worth the paper it was written on. It has no force here. It's happy talk. It's some great ideas. It's happy talk. The people that introduced it, good for them. But it's it reminds me when I was a Boy Scout. You had 12, the code of 12 things you memorize. You live by those. Maybe that's what it is. We live by them when it's convenient for certain people. That's the only thing I want to address on that. I have quite a bit more I'd like to talk about, but it is election time, and it's interesting how you start watching social media, your names pop up, and how certain people really become infatuated with certain members of this board and certain candidates. So just pay attention. We
we got some visionaries out there, and but that comes with the turf. We wouldn't be up here unless we had a target on our back, and some people, it gives them a lot of, probably makes their day. They keyboard warriors, gives them something to do. So we have a couple more meetings before August 4th, and I look forward to seeing some of you next couple meetings. Take care. Oh, and one more thing. I believe, tentatively understand there will be a ZBA meeting on July the 8th at 7 o'clock, unless something happens first, that will be addressing the tower issue for Forbes and Jefferson for the residents and those are interested. You can email to the township here if you have a position to Mr. Palin. He assured me that he would forward any correspondence to the ZBA chair. So tentatively, that meeting is July the 8th, 7 o'clock here regarding the tower issue for Forbes and Jefferson. Thank you.
Trustee Joseph.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. Just wanted to touch on something that one of the board members talked about. That was one of the commenters talked about the closing of the board meeting on June 9th. I'll start there. The meeting ended with where this one kind of picks up in terms of board comment or public comments. And I think everyone's aware who's run for office. It is election year, so we're going to see, I kind of miss Colonel Nigro. It was about this time of the year that he would come to the podium and refer to silly season. It's when the crazies come out. It's when all of the gamesmanship goes on and the signed debates and all of that silly season is what Colonel Nigro would refer to it as. I've always been a big fan of robust dialogue, and for the most part, the people that came out tonight that live near Mr. Acciavatti and support Mr. Acciavatti and these projects, I support you. There's no debate about being excited about a number of the projects that we have around town. There should be room for constructive criticism. Sometimes it gets heated. That to me is what we're supposed to be doing. And I've said many times, when 7 people all agree on the same thing, it's apparent only one person is doing the thinking. So I don't have any issues with the supervisors. Well, just in general, the nature of how we conduct ourselves. There are board meetings when I wish we would have gotten a little better, a little more focused and able to present our ideas without some hostility. I'm responsible for some of that. We can do better. The unfortunate thing on the meeting that we ended on the 9th was I was talking about something that I think you'll see a lot of our public safety weigh in on. So there's some issues involving how I see public safety and how other board members see public safety. It's sort of, it's just a difference of opinion. When I suggested that as we talk about the budget coming up for public safety, and not, cutting or defunding our public safety, the closing comments were to attack me as a lifelong, I don't know, livestock at the public trough, some comment like that. And the idea that a civil servant is somehow a charity case. Tonight, I listened to Josh present, Mr. Sonnenberg present some of the things that he's most proud of, and he got emotional. That's a guy who believes in his soul the work that he's doing. The only thing I saw a bigger smile was when his wife was at the podium and she was taking, a prideful tour about the great work that her husband does. But aside from that, he's overcome with joy and deep feelings of emotion, talking about something that our residents pay him to do. That's a civil servant. That's not a bureaucrat with his nose in the public trough. When I left the meeting on the 9th, I walked out with an employee who's been here for 42 years. She wanted to know, is she also livestock at the public trough? No, she's a dedicated civil servant, as are our police, as are our fire, Mr. Coddington and Mr. Johnson's team talking about all the things that they have going on. I didn't appreciate this idea that if you work for government, that you're a charity case and that you're a bureaucrat feeding at the public trough. It was a disservice to our civil servants, not only in this community, but really across the region. I personally, I work with broken kids. I've worked in Children's Protective Services and as a juvenile court probation officer for going on 3 decades. My life was not easy growing up. It was very, very broken. And the benefit I had was some people that were not blood to me. They were coaches that came out and helped me. My father wasn't around, and they came to my swearing in. It was the proudest day. These men have been with me for my whole career. And so what they taught me, I try to take to the kids that I work with in Macomb County. And I know that tensions get high, but to have that referred to as a feeding at the public trough my whole life as a way of diminishing my argument for what I think is a value, and that is our police department, it was hurtful. And it was hurtful to the employees that work here that today are referred to as team, but when it's convenient, the big reveal is that if you're a government employee, you're just really a charity case, and that's not right. It's not right. I'd like to address a couple of the comments that came forward. There's a real, I clearly it's an election year. I'm going to let Treasurer Lafata, if he chooses to answer about his credentials and treasurer training and so forth. But the comments that are made at the podium, and this one presenter came forward with this selective indignation about bullying and that ridiculousness. She failed to mention that in her attempt to disparage Treasurer Lafata, calling him a coward, when I pointed out that he was a war veteran who deserved respect on a particular issue, and referring to him as a coward and a traitor, and then the sharing and the liking that goes on by the political candidates that you put your signs on top of, coming in and talking about decency and ethics is really selective indignation. It's laughable. This is not an honorable person, and she is defending an unethical person. The code of ethics that were passed, and the reason that I did not support them is because there were no objective measures in the code of ethics. They were very subjective terms like, we will be this and we will be that. And I said, let's include some very objective measures that say, if you don't come to work, you don't get paid. Now that was rejected, because that one we can measure. How do you measure if somebody's thrifty, kind, honest, brave? It's very subjective. So the ethics ordinance didn't go far enough. It didn't address violations of ethics, so I didn't support it. It was kind of laughable. And again, it's an election year cleansing. I'm an ethical person. Look at me with an ethics ordinance. In terms of the very weird attacks that went Treasurer Lafata's way, I suspect they'll be coming my way. They're just they're very weird, and they're unhinged, and it's a very odd social media blitz with a lot of misspelled insults and a very low brow attack. They spend their entire day, you're paying for their advise and consent representative in the clerk. It's never here. And that was the concerns about paying somebody to not be here. Now, that's a much different debate than I have with Mr. Acciavatti. It's a much different debate than I have with Treasurer Lafata or Trustee Vosberg or Trustee Domink. I'd never question where he's at. He's committed to the board. We have a difference of opinion, ideas. But when somebody's not here and they spend their life getting paid for the work they do here, and they're conspiring with these really fringe people, these very, very odd people that just spend all their days on social media and then they call and harass, and they make outrageous threats They're kind of scary. They're a little bit on the scary side. And I ask all of you as you campaign, be watchful out there. A number of candidates are here tonight, and it's the first time they've ever been in a boardroom. And as you're out campaigning, be cautious, be careful, because there's some real cuckoos out there, and they say and do some real scary things. So please be careful, be mindful. And I did appreciate the comments that came forward today about the support of some of the projects we have moving forward. I'll close with this. We had an agenda item to offer discussion about one of the biggest projects. And while I had a differing opinion and I voted that way, and I had, I think, a fair opportunity to express my ideas, I feel personally, and I can't speak for anybody else, the project must move forward as the board has approved. I think we have an obligation to make sure that it is the best possible project it can be. And delaying the project, we already have difficulty getting in, with DNR regulations and so forth. I think any delay in the projects pushes us back, and then we start getting into the winter, and we just don't deliver on what we really need to do with that shoreline. So it wasn't my first choice, but it is what it is, and the board voted, and we got an obligation to make it the best project that it can be. Thank you.
Trustee Bosberg.
Thank you. I keep hearing bits and pieces of the Scout Law, and that's probably what we should have adopted. It's just like the ethics ordinance. Scout Law goes trustworthy, loyal, helpful, friendly, courteous, kind, obedient, cheerful, thrifty, brave, clean, and reverent. One of the things that was spoke earlier in one of the agenda items talked about board meetings would go smoothly if that particular thing were amended and added to our rules. I say that board meetings would go smoothly if unnecessary items weren't put on the agenda. Thank you.
Trustee Domingue.
First, I'd like to tell all the residents and everyone here, have a safe and happy 4th of July. And please remember, if you're using fireworks, to be considerate of your neighbors and of their pets. So many animals are affected by the lounge bags. Mr. Hermes, nothing against your store. I didn't vote no because of you. I just have an issue with fireworks. I'm an animal lover. I have 1 dog and I have 3 grandpas. And I know what I have to do. Last year, I spent 2 hours at Pollard Park just to get out of my subdivision because of the constant barrage of explosives. So nothing against you, sir, just so you know. Next, I'd like to, and this usually isn't me, but next I'd like to address some comments that were directed at me on social media by a member of this board that were forwarded to me by friends. I don't play the social media game. I am the person who I am. I stand by myself and I'm independent. I've been up here 16 years. If you like me, you like me. You don't, you don't. I get it. But my first point is I reuse, I recycle, and I save the environment. Point 2, I don't like being accused of contacting a business owner, reference someone's political signs. I don't care where your signs are. You got your sign locations, I have mine. I'm not running on a slate. I'm not piggybacking with anybody else. It's me. I think anybody, like I say, I'm not going to campaign because it's not up here. That's that point. I'd also think if I'm accused of something, confront me, and I'll be glad to take a polygraph on that point in a minute. Because there's going to be one truth and one untruth. The third point, take your shots at me. Anybody can take your shots at me, I don't care. I've had a lot worse with the career I've had. But when you include a shot at me and it references my 88-year-old mother, I have a problem. I don't attack your family or anything else. They say what goes around comes around. Well, all I can say is at one point in life, every one of us will meet St. Peter at the Golden Gate. And I think when this person meets St. Peter at the Golden Gate, there will be a rude awakening. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Treasurer Lafata.
First of all, I'd like to thank all the residents that came out to the board meeting. This is probably the largest crowd I've seen since I've been in office. I truly appreciate it. I will try to answer some of the questions. And to be honest and truthful, I think is ethical. I'd just like to make that statement. But when you're truthful and you're honest, I think that's ethical. Unfortunately, ethics and all of the words that deal with ethics, unfortunately, are abstract nouns. So you can't touch them, you can't feel them, you can't taste them, you can't measure them. So ethics winds up being the voice, unfortunately, of the majority. Because it's really not defined in the ethics policy because it really isn't enforced. It can't be enforced, and it has no teeth. There's no mention or no method for enforcement. But in reality, the word ethics is an abstract noun, very difficult to find, very difficult to enforce because everybody has a different connotation of what ethics are. And I appreciate Mr. Speaker's comments. I welcome corrective criticism. Like Trustee Joseph and Trustee Anderson, if you can't enforce something and it's really, unfortunately, it winds up being a piece of paper. I've looked at other municipalities. None of the municipalities have an ethics policy because they can't enforce it. It winds up just being a quagmire. Mr. LaCarrie has mentioned the fact that we spend $40,000. Well, let's go back to the first question. First of all, certification by township treasurer is not required by Michigan compiled law. That is not a requirement. My deputy treasurer, Ellen Clark, is certified, and she has a very good handle on what needs to be done and what doesn't need to be done. I have 7 business-related certifications plus 2 U.S. patents. I'd be willing to post my resume next to either the clerks or the supervisors at any given time so I can support what qualifications I have for the role of treasurer. But again, I want to say it's not a requirement to have the treasurer certified. I went to some of the Michigan Township Association classes originally, and after being there, it wound up being very superficial. You can learn just about as much as you need to out of this treasurer's handbook from Michigan Township Association. Just like it's not a requirement in Michigan compiled law to be in the workplace, it is not a requirement to be certified. The water bills and the $40,000, I have a lot of numbers in my head, and I can't tell you exactly if the annual cost for posting water bills is $40,000. But currently, the township bills quarterly. There is a request from the sewer and water department to bill monthly. So whatever the postage and the printing is multiply it times 3. And if it's $40,000, it will go up. Now, there's other methods to pay water bills. You can post them online, but there's other problems involved. One of them is I have numerous seniors, and they're very accustomed to coming to the treasurer's counter, paying for the water bill, and getting a receipt. During COVID-19 shutdown, they would take their water bills, put them in the drop box, and the next day they would call because they were very nervous of whether their payments were received and posted. That's one of the issues. I get numerous complaints from those that don't want to pay electronically because there's a charge. And it all rolls back into who wants to pay for what. If the water and sewer department wants to, incur the cost of electronic transfers, that's fine, that's part of it. But you can't tell a senior citizen that he needs to go on a computer and make electronic transfers from his bank account. It just doesn't work. You go and sit on that counter and you try to tell one of the seniors that. It just doesn't work. So again, if you want to be ethical, think about what ethics is. Being truthful is being ethical. I will always tell you the truth. I am always in the workplace every day. That is ethical. Not being in the workplace and receiving a paycheck, I guess you don't call that not being ethical, because we have an ethics policy and people aren't in the workplace. Now, this is the truth, and we have the truth and we have ethics. So you have to understand, do the two go together or do you separate them? Does ethics only apply to certain board members and not all? Or is ethics defined by 4 to 3 board members? Or will it ever be enforced? Because it can't be measured, touched, smelled, or heard. Thank you for your time. If somebody's constituents have any issues, please send them directly to me so I can't, so there's no confusion on their questions. I welcome corrective criticism. I'm always open for continuous improvement. That's been my whole life. Always try and do something better. And I'm not in this for political reasons or personal gain. I took this position to serve the residents. So if somebody's got an issue, they're welcome. I'm always in my office. They can call. I'd be willing to talk to them. That way there won't be any confusion. Unfortunately, I don't do Facebook, so I don't know what goes on Facebook. Don't really care, because it seems like there's a lot of people out there just slinging a lot of untruths around, and to me, it just causes confusion. Thank you.
Clerk Barry.
Thank you, Mr. Supervisor. I'm going to try to make this as brief as I can. I have had a policy ever since I've been an elected official, since 2012, that I do not address personal attacks or political witch hunts or whatever you want to call them from the board table. And the reason why I don't is because I don't believe it is the forum for it. I think it's an improper forum in order to do that. We can certainly go out on the campaign trail and do that. We can do that outside of this room. So therefore, I'm not going to address anything that was brought up tonight with regards to any personal concerns or any political shots and things of that nature. So, however, I do invite and encourage anyone, and I have said this repeatedly, anyone who has any questions, who would like to know what the truth is, if you will, from someone else's perspective, would like to ask any questions, I will sit down with any residents. You can call me directly. My number is 586-942-3900. That goes directly to me. And I would be happy to take an appointment with you, take a meeting with you outside the office, inside the office, anytime, Saturdays, Sundays. Some of you may remember when I started, I had coffee with the clerk office hours because some people couldn't make it here during business hours. And so I would meet with them on Saturdays outside of the office. I do that very frequently. Sometimes people are more comfortable doing that. I will be wherever anyone needs me to be at any time that's most convenient for you. If you work midnights and you have a night off and you want to meet at 2 in the morning, give me a call and I'll make sure that we make that accommodation for you. So if there's any questions or concerns that residents have about the clerk's department, elections, accounting, which is another department that the clerk has a statutory responsibility for, such as our audit tonight, our audit report, that is all overseen by the clerk. If you have any questions on any of those things, please give me a call at that number. Come into the office, make an appointment with us. I'd be more than happy to meet with you at any time and answer any questions that you may have. And I think that that's the best way to address some of the things that you might have heard tonight. And as Treasurer Lafata said, and he's absolutely correct, go directly to the source. I had a resident recently that I met with yesterday, and he's speaking to every single candidate who's running for office. Good for him. Bravo. You should exactly do that. He's doing tremendous due diligence. Not everybody has that kind of time, so maybe we need to make a phone call or get our information from a credible source. And I recommend that you do that. And I'd like to make myself available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Any day that works for you will work for me. I will make that work. A couple of public service announcements as well with regards to clerk's functions as well as elections. We have been, since COVID-19 became an issue, we have been taking public comments, as you heard some tonight, through our website. Now that all of the restrictions have been lifted and we are maintaining all of the appropriate protocols here at the office, we are going to be discontinuing that particular service as far as providing public comments through the website. That was something that was only put in place for COVID. I would certainly be open if any of the board members or the public is interested in us maintaining that. I have no problem doing that. However, it's not necessary at this time for the reason it was put in place. That has now been mitigated, and so that's no longer necessary. So it's just an additional item that will be kind of cleaning things up on a housekeeping front. So we will be discontinuing that particular option for you. Again, if anyone has concerns that you'd like to continue that, please communicate that to a board member, or if any of the board members have a concern that you'd like us to continue doing that, please let us know, and we will work with the various departments who participate in that function in order to maintain that if there's some interest in doing that. Also, as I mentioned, next week absentee ballots will be going out, and we will not be having another board meeting before that. So I'd like to go over just a couple of things with regards to ballots during a primary election. Some things that we try to educate individuals about. Oftentimes they don't understand, or voters don't understand, that during an August primary, it is a nominating election. And what that means is that you have two elections going on simultaneously, much as you did in the presidential primary. You have a Republican primary nominating election as well as a Democratic Party primary nominating election. And you cannot vote in both. So you cannot cross over. You must make all of your selections from either the Republican column, from the Republican candidates, or from the Democratic column, the Democratic candidates. If you are to select candidates from both columns, you will spoil your ballot and your vote will not count. So it's very important that people understand that when they receive that ballot in the mail and they are marking their ballot, that they must make all of their selections from either the Republican Party or the Democratic Party columns. In the event that you do inadvertently spoil your ballot, or in the event you complete your ballot, submit it to the clerk's office, and then change your mind about one of the decisions that you made, we can spoil your ballot for you and provide you with another ballot. A lot of people don't realize that. This happens oftentimes in presidential primaries when candidates will drop out, and now you voted for someone who's no longer in the race, and you can get another ballot in order to make your vote count. It's the same thing with an August primary. If you realize you've spoiled your ballot, or you're concerned you might have spoiled it, or if in fact the candidate that you supported and voted for when you submitted your ballot is no longer the candidate you wish to support and vote for, you can change that. You can do it up till the day before the election. You have up to 4 o'clock the Monday before the election to make any changes you'd like to make, and we will retrieve your ballot, spoil it for you, and you will be provided an additional ballot that you can then submit at the clerk's office. If you choose to do that on the day before the election, you must do it in the clerk's office. Prior to that, you will be able to receive a new ballot, either have it mailed to you, or you will be able to receive a new ballot in person and you can take it with you. But if you're doing it the day before the election, you must vote that ballot in the clerk's office. So please keep those things in mind as you're receiving your absentee ballots, so that you don't spoil your ballot, and if in fact you do, please understand that there is a mechanism in place for you to correct that. And we will be here available at the clerk's office Monday through Friday, 8 to 4:30, to assist you with that. We are also open the Saturday before the election. We will also be here and available to help you. Thank you, Mr. Supervisor.
Thank you. I appreciate last meeting and tonight's meeting, along with the last couple of weeks. For me, I appreciate the campaign season. From the seat I'm sitting in, It marks a new beginning, and it marks an end to 3 years of feeling like I've been bullied, sabotaged, played jokes on. And the fact that people are watching means a lot to me. And I look forward to this continuing with light shined on it in the game's ending. We do have a closed session tonight. The board and our legal counsel is going to leave the room. There will be no action item coming out of closed session, and we will adjourn the meeting thereafter. Do I have a motion to go into closed session?
Motion to enter closed session.
Motion by Clerk Barry to enter closed session, support by Trustee Joseph. Clerk Barry, please call the roll.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Joseph.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson.
Aye.
Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Vosberg. Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
Aye, we are in closed session at 10:20 p.m. We're going to You have a motion to re-enter open session.
Motion to re-enter open session.
Second.
Trustee Demink to re-enter open session.
Clerk Barry, aye. Trustee Demink.
Aye.
Trustee Anderson. Trustee Joseph. Trustee Bossberg. Treasurer Lafata.
Aye.
Supervisor Acciavatti.
We're in closed session at 10:42 PM. Motion to adjourn. Motion by trustee Anderson, support by trustee Joseph to adjourn. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed by saying nay. We are adjourned at 10:43.